2 days down and 2 to go here at the virtual tour of America's Dairyland as the Echelon Racing League makes its final stop of the season in and around Milwaukee, Wisconsin. After 2 exciting days of criterium racing, we got 2 more lined up starting in Shorewood today and then heading to the legendary Downer Avenue course for Sunday's race tomorrow. Brad Stoner here with Frankie Andreu in the voice of the Tour of America's Dairyland, Todd Bastide. Todd, I want to start with you talking about yesterday, because it was super exciting racing. We saw really close finishes. Let's start with our pro men's race yesterday, because we're running pro men first this weekend. We've been alternating here at the Echelon Racing League, but it was close pretty much all day. The thing that I noticed most was the Above and Beyond Cancer team. Those guys were so aggressive on the front. I mean, Timmy Bauer first to go. We saw the white, green, and yellow jerseys off the front all day. They were riding for Matt Usborne, but really impressive teamwork yesterday from Above and Beyond Cancer.
Yeah, what we saw very much parallels what we see in real life at Grafton, and that is there's a lot of team activity. We just saw the teams going at it. Any move, somebody was assigned to chase it down. It's like there were assignments. We saw that play out throughout the entirety of the race. And then we celebrated a new name going to the top step of the podium at the end of the men's race yesterday.
Yeah, a little surprising to see Blodgett getting up to the front for Restart Racing, as they really did a nice job of pulling back those Above and Beyond Cancer riders off the front. Now, I say surprising to see Blodgett up front because normally it has been some of his Restart Racing teammates at the top of the leaderboard at the end of the race. So maybe working for a new rider yesterday, and Dave Blodgett gets a big win for Restart Racing. Now, remember, that is the team of guys like Jaden Yeager, so pretty cool to see Blodgett get a chance to go at it. He didn't give himself enough credit yesterday. He said, I just got lucky in the sprint. Well, you don't get lucky in RGT racing. You got to time it just right. So Blodgett beats Kevin Bouchard Hall to the line. Remember, Bouchard Hall already has a stage win here in the Echelon Racing League. Thursday's winner, Matt Usborne, in for third place. Close finish there. Triple X Racing Athletic coach Chris Naven in fourth. Ned Bowen held on for fifth place. We saw him attacking a lot out there. Overall leader, Ben Thomas in sixth. Remember, we've been talking about the Ben Thomas, Matt Usborne battle. Usborne in third place yesterday, Thomas in sixth place yesterday. Now, Frankie, that's important because these two have been going at it all season. Now, Usborne probably mathematically going to have a hard time catching up to Ben Thomas out there today, but he's been really doing a nice job of trying to fight his way back into the overall here.
Yeah, Ben Thomas has been, you could say, Mr. Consistent. The only time he's really struggled is when he's had technical issues. Otherwise, been up there. But Matt Usborne is a fighter, and he's not going to give up. And even with 2 days left, his Above and Beyond Cancer team has shown that they're going to continue to attack. And Usborne can respond. He has a fantastic sprint with a great result yesterday, placing third. But obviously, Restart Racing with Blodgett and Bouchard Hall, they timed it out perfectly. And so they're going to be the men to beat in the next sprint for the race coming up for Shorewood.
Restart Racing into second place overall in the team competition, but Ben Thomas's Team Tour 2000 presented by Callis has just been unstoppable. 617 points for them to Restart Racing's 518. And then a little further down, you see Insured presented by Pedal Power at 457. Above and Beyond Cancer presented by Bike World and 431. And then Draft Racing sitting in fifth place at 405. That the team of Bruce Bird saw some wins from him earlier in the season. There's Dave Blodgett. Look at that, Todd. He's got the Wisconsin flag ready to go. A little bit of Wisconsin pride here. Pretty cool to see a local rider get a win. Now, Dave is, like I said, Wisconsin-based rider, so he actually has raced that Grafton course that we were on yesterday in person, and he was saying that things line up pretty well here.
Right, and it's also a factor of pride that Dave actually has some behind-the-scenes tinkering involvement with RGT, helping to create these courses. So he's got both sides of the coin. He's got the Grafton course in real life at the Giro de Grafton, and he understands a little bit of what's going behind the scenes in RGT.
Did a little bit of tuning on this one as well as we head to Shorewood, just off the lake. It's a very nice suburb of Milwaukee, just outside of downtown. Todd, this one's pretty straightforward, 4 corners, except for what we're unofficially calling the wiggle. You see the little quick turn there just before you get to what I guess is turn 3.
Right, and it's the longest course that we've had in many of the years, going into our 13th year, and over the years, Shorewood has been the longest. So each one of the laps, but it's basically a 4-corner with a wiggle, a lot of nice long stretches. One of the features we'll talk about throughout the day is the crowd support is incredible. Now, this is actually the cadence. All of our riders do 130 RPM as they're riding. This is not sped up video. Actually, it is. But it's going to give us a chance. There's turn number 1, so it's 4 left-handers. Again, we already see the parties on the side straight, on the back straight. And these are nice, fast corners, so it's not like there's a specific line. We were talking about specific lines at Grafton. We were talking about specific lines at a couple of the corners in Janesville. Shorewood, those lines are there, but they're a little bit more generous. Here's the wiggle. At speed, you hardly even notice it. It's a nice, consistent move right through after turn number 3, setting you up for turn number 4, and then we have a nice long straight on Oakland with all the businesses that support. There's the wiggle right there and through. 2, 3 wide, no problem whatsoever for the riders. Setting up turn number 4, the Shorewood Business Improvement District, a huge part of putting on this race, and all the businesses along Oakland on the start-finish line participate in the party atmosphere that is the Shorewood Cycling Criterium Classic.
And then a nice fast finish to the line as you go back and do it again. Nice wide roads out there as well. It's like poured concrete. It's a little different than like blacktop or pavement, I guess. So I think it's pretty fast for the riders and nice wide roads out there as well. All right, we are 3 minutes away from our pro men. You see everybody gathering on the line, getting ready to get rolling around our virtual Shorewood course here, presented by Quick Trip. Want to bring in the race director of the Tour of America's Dairyland, or I guess I should say one of the race directors. Yesterday we were with Tom the Plow Schuler, and today Bill Koch joining us on the show. Bill, first off, are you ready for racing? Do you have your Quick Trip donuts and chocolate milk ready to go? The 2 essentials for Tour of America's Dairyland watching.
I do, definitely. I have the donuts actually right here. The Glazers donuts. Have actually one's missing that I already chowed on earlier. The chocolate milk I'll bring out a little bit earlier, and I actually brought 3 cowbells. So, you know, you can never have enough cowbell, Brad, and that's why we've got 3 of them.
I like a race director that comes prepared. Bill, talk to me about Shorewood. How did this come to be? How did this make its way onto the Tour of America's Dairyland?
The Shorewood was part of the Super Week race for several years. It was always a pro women and pro men's only event. When we came to them, we had asked them to do a full day of races. They originally said no. We made them the opening day with just the 2 races. We sort of acquiesced after a while because we really liked the crowds. We wanted Shorewood to be a part of Toad. So they joined us in year 2, not year 1. And slowly but surely, we've added 1 race at a time. It's kind of like turning the heat up in the pot with the frog in it or the toad in it versus throwing it in boiling water. And today we have a full slate of races in Shorewood, and it's just a really super, super day that generally begins the last 4 days of craziness with Toad.
Really excited to add paracycling as well today, adding 3 races to our race schedule today. Para has always been important to the Tour of America's Dairyland, and I know it's really exciting to be what we think is the first virtual para race in the world.
Yeah, we're going with that for sure, Brad. It's just the support from the para world has been amazing. And this year we're moving them from the first 4 days that we generally run them to the last 4 days, which you'll see the biggest spectator crowd. So we're really excited to see them virtually race. And we think it's just a good way to introduce the hand cycle scene to a new venue, Brady Street, Shorewood, Downer, and Wauwatosa.
All right, looking forward to it, Bill. Thanks for being with us today. I know you're going to be hanging out with us throughout the day as we get ready to send our pro men off here inside 30 seconds to start as they get ready to ratchet up the power. Got some good-looking pain caves today. Looks like Charlie Revel is back with the multicolored LED setup. I think that's one of the Above and Beyond Cancer guys up in the top left there as well. So here we go. Start to ratchet up because we are inside of 10 seconds to start. The jackets come off. Everyone's out of the saddle. And let's go racing at the Tour of America's Dairyland, presented by Quick Trip. Day 3 in Shorewood underway.
Watch those numbers as they're going to turn to the red, obviously, for the start. Look at the group that's already off the back. Oh, my goodness. That's not a weight. One thing about this course, though, it is going to be a little bit easier to be able to sit in. Not as many turns. So you aren't going to have that whiplash effect of having to accelerate each and every time. But the start, always critical. Got to be able to make sure you're actually keeping contact. But with the long straightaways, and relatively, you could just call this a four-corner course, it should be easier to be able to stay in the group. So I'm thinking and hoping we're actually going to have a larger group throughout most of this race until we get to the end. And that being said, it's going to be harder for a breakaway to establish itself.
Yeah, Todd, if you can just make it through the first 10 minutes of these races, if you can just figure out how to ride in that group, you make it through those first brutal accelerations in the first 6 to 8 turns, you got a pretty good chance of hanging in there for the next 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's slightly different in the virtual world. If you're riding in real life, there's a sense that, some of these guys have been on the rollers, they've been warming up ahead of time, but the race kind of finds its rhythm through the course of the first couple laps. You're actually picking out real lines. There's a little bit more conservacy. But when you're on a trainer, that seems to go away. And as we've seen virtual racing over the last 12 months, there's this stick of dynamite that goes off as soon as the gun goes. And so there's this sense that the field's actually getting a feel for where they are fitness-wise. Had they warmed up properly? Are they going to have to go a little bit more conservative and ramp into it? But there's kind of this defining of the group pace. There's this vote, if you will. All right, we're going hard. Everybody on board. If you're not willing to stay with us, you're off the back. Or we're just going to kind of ramp it up. And so, we saw that chaotic start. Now we're through the wiggle and heading towards the finish line for the first time. And what's going to happen is they're coming together.
Well, you can see they've already let off a little bit up here on the front. Frankie, that'll be a nice relief for the guys that were just trying to hold on there.
Yeah, it would be great to have that group set up. There's a little group that got caught, and again, it was just at the start. Literally, they came off in the first 10 meters, and a little bit is just not having that power to be able to go right at the start. The rest of the group, I saw Timmy Bauer, though, was in a little bit of trouble in the back of that front group, along with Alec Jones, who were hanging on the back. So, a little bit of a learning curve, and it's just the power of putting out 600-700 watts at the start is so critical, and that really what does separate the virtual racing from in-person racing. In real life racing stuff as hard as these virtual races do.
Well, Todd, the real life Shorewood course.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, there's some good concrete there. Now, there's also on the horizon some larger wiggles. We've got the wiggle after turn 3 on the course itself, a little chicane. But Milwaukee continues to grow. We were talking about this at Janesville. Milwaukee continues to grow. So on the horizon, Oakland, the start-finish line of our Shorewood course, is slated to at some point have a complete overhaul, and so we may have to modify the course a little bit. But nonetheless, right now, great pavement. There's and the backside especially, as of last week, covered in snow, but in June when we typically race it, covered with parties and crowds and just a great atmosphere there in Shorewood.
The parties, one of the things that make the Tour of America's Dairyland a race that everyone wants to come to. It's a great atmosphere, great courses, and great amenities for the riders as well. I know a lot of people appreciate the host housing that's available for a lot of the riders, top-class registration, a smooth process for riders, payout results always on time. I know everyone appreciates that. And a solid medical program at the Tour of America's Dairyland as well. You never want to see the doctors at Toad, but luckily we have some of the best in the world. I want to welcome to the show Dr. Amin Afsari. He's with Ascension Sports Medicine in the Midwest Orthopedic Sports Hospital. Dr. Afsari, I understand you have spent some time at the Tour of America's Dairyland with us, maybe a budding racing cyclist yourself.
Yeah, it's been about 4 years covering the race. It's impressive what they do out there. It's certainly not the way I ride. I ride a lot slower and mostly stationary right now.
Oh, that's all a lot of us around the country can do. Hey, talk to us about some of the specific stuff that you see at the Tour of America's Dairyland. I know cyclists have some of these unique challenges when it comes to injuries, coming back from injuries, stuff like that. What are some of the things that you guys at Ascension see for cyclists at Toad?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Midwest Orthopedic Specialty Hospitals, first of all, we're privileged to be able to take care of the riders and be at the race. It's a ton of fun for us. The injuries we see are sometimes mild, something that feels like a wrist sprain after a crash, and it turns out to be a pretty severe wrist bone fracture that if we don't address it, could become a big deal. Other times, it's a laceration on the elbow that might sew up at the side of the race at the medical tent, which I did a couple years ago. That Shorewood ride is it was impressive. Riding in the trail car was impressive. Those guys are good. Everyone listening, I'm sure, knows these guys are riding fast, and the crashes are no joke.
Yeah,
so we like to be there and get to it quick.
Talk about some of the advantages for the athletes having access to Ascension doctors as opposed to maybe just EMS on site or a first aid tent. I mean, you guys are sports medicine specialists.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know the nuances of these injuries, and it's a matter of the difference is, are you going to race the next day or not? And if we're not there, and if we're not getting the riders in quickly, a lot of times they're not going to ride the next day because they're trying to figure out where to get seen, how to get seen quick, how to determine if an injury is something that they can continue to race with, or is it something that might shut them down.
Yeah, if they do need that additional care, I know a lot of times we send riders for x-rays or for additional imaging. Can you guys help them get set up with that for riders that are from out of town?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, our trainers are so connected to us. A quick text message to us, and we say send them over. We get a quick x-ray. And once we determine the severity, then it's just a matter of do we need a quick further imaging study, or sometimes it's a surgery that is the same day if needed. There's certainly times where it's a severe crash may end up with injuries that we help facilitate getting them to the ER right away.
And it can be super important. Obviously, we've been hearing a lot recently about TBIs, concussions, head injuries. These are, unfortunately, can be very common in bike racing. And if not properly addressed and diagnosed, it can be really dangerous for a lot of people. We were talking yesterday. I claimed the title as the only announcer to ever get a concussion at a bike race by announcing. I banged my head, but I thought I was fine. And it turned out I had a mild concussion. And if it weren't for the Mosh and Ascension docs, I think I would have just let it go. But it's really important to have experts on site that can identify that stuff and make sure that you get the care you need.
Yeah, absolutely. That's impressive. You just took a step up in my book.
It's even better because I was taking a nap on the stage, believe it or not. Just ended up banging the back of my head. But yeah, if it weren't for the docs on site, I don't know that I would have gone through the concussion protocol. So it makes a difference. Sometimes you feel like you're fine, but you need expert docs to be able to check you out.
I think it helps. It absolutely does. I mean, we've seen bikers come in from out of town. A biker who was aspiring pro and came in from Colorado. I got a text message. We saw him. He hopped on a plane, came in the next day. We fixed him up 24 hours later, and he was back training on his trainer. And he was able to get to Spain about 2 months later and continue his progress to the pros. So we make it happen if it needs to be done. We're there for the riders.
That's awesome. Keeping the best rolling. Hey, Dr. Afsari, Frankie and I are starting a race team. Do you want to get in for 2021? Maybe we do some amateur racing at Toad this year. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be great. Is it okay if I ride with elbow pads, knee pads, hip pads?
Yeah, Frankie will take care of you. He's going to be your domestique.
You can ride with everything. You can ride with everything you have. I have a question because as we get ready to go back into in real life, wondering what your advice on best practice is, because most common is road rash. Guys crashing, they're sliding across, they get scraped up. Should they, is it antibiotic cream? Is it Vaseline? Do you keep it moist? Do you let it dry? What is best practice for taking care of road rash?
So early on, I prefer keep it moist. You know what? The treatment for those really, my subspecialty is upper extremity and hand surgery. So, we see fingertips chopped off, and the very tip of the fingertip, when that's chopped off, we keep it moist. We keep it moist, change the dressings twice a day, and that tissue really regenerates well. So road rash, I prefer keep it moist. Same routine as some of our finger injuries, and really the first week or two, depending on the severity. And then as you get some healing, pain goes down, less weepage, less drainage from the wound, then you let it dry out at that point.
And would you have any tips on how to keep it moist? Is it with antibacterial creams, or is it like Vaseline, or put like a like Tagaderm or a cellophane over that? What would be your advice on that?
So triple antibiotic ointment works great, and then Tegaderm dressing on top of that is wonderful because it seals pretty well around the edges. But really, gauze and tape is okay. Gauze and tape will start to stick after more than 8, 10, maybe 12 hours. It starts to get sticky a little bit, even with that triple antibiotic ointment. So, but the Tegaderm doesn't tend to stick in the wound as much. So that seems to work better.
All right, good stuff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
These were personal questions that I needed to know.
Absolutely, no worries.
You would think by now, Frank, you would have it figured out. But, well, let's hope that we don't have to learn the ways of wound dressing when we get back to real racing. Dr. Afsari, thank you so much for being with us today, and can't wait to be back in real life at the Tour of America's Dairyland with Ascension Medical this year.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, back to live racing out on course, where luckily we don't have to worry about any road rash or broken bones, anything like that in virtual racing. Although, Frankie, I have been hearing about some riders pulling muscles, riders that, maybe you get a new bike, you're not fit quite right. If you spend a lot of time on the trainer, you could have a repetitive use injury on the trainer, I guess.
I think it'd be easy to get a repetitive use on the trainer, and you're locked in that one position. You're pedaling as hard as you can. So I could see you're definitely tweaking, and especially if you're used to having one bike on the trainer and you have a different bike that you go and ride outside, and all of a sudden, on the trainer you're doing 500-600 watts, you're going hard, and then all of a sudden you get onto that other bike with a little bit different fit, and you start trying to duplicate those performances. That will definitely run you into trouble. You need to take about a week and a half to 2 weeks of kind of riding the new bike, your outside bike, to kind of adjust and get used to what you were doing inside.
And let's be honest, the greatest stories are about crashing when you're on the trainer. You break a skewer, the bike goes flying sideways. I mean, those are great stories. You don't hear a lot of them, but I've heard enough where something goes sideways when you're indoors in the pain cave and you still crash. Yeah, it's embarrassing to go and get treatment for that injury, but it does happen.
You see the riders in the Zoom room on all their various different forms. Some riders, Frankie, like to get out of the saddle a lot. Like I'm watching Charlie Velez. He's second from the top on the left in that black jersey. Velez is like out of the saddle all day. I mean, coming out of the turns, he really moves around a lot. He's really moving side to side a lot. But some riders much more steady. You don't see them moving out of the saddle a lot. Maybe like Chris Navin down at the bottom right there in the Triple X jersey as he gets out of the saddle, just as I mentioned it. But various forms for the different riders on the trainers. And I guess it's just down to personal preference. I'm sure there's some scientific best practices in there to maximize your power, but for the most part, I think riders just like to go with the most comfortable way, right, Frankie?
Well, a lot of it is your positioning, where you are in that pack. If you're on the front of the pack and you're able to coast through the apex and then pedal coming out, you're able to stay in the saddle. But if you're a little bit further back, you get that slingshot effect, and you've seen the riders, they have to get out of the saddle to be able to produce that power to make sure that they keep in contact, and obviously that's critical. You see Usborne up there, Charlie Ravel up there, a lot of the usual names. John Cooper doing a good job, Christian Parrish. And so, again, this course, speed's going to be a little bit higher than what we've seen on some of the other courses. I think the pack is going to remain a little bit bigger, and that could lead to a little bit more exciting racing a little bit later on with 26 kilometers to go, because I think you're going to have a little bit more fresh legs in here, and not everybody wants to wait for a sprint. I mean, I talked with Charlie Velez today, and he said he hates the field sprints. He has a hard time fighting for position, and he doesn't have that burst. He's able to push himself and suffer, and he has big aspirations to become a pro cyclist. That is his goal, to try to get on a pro team and become pro cyclist. And the virtual world is the course that he's taking in order to try to get that pro contract.
Yeah, Todd, we see the dichotomy in real life too. I mean, the riders that go into the break, it's a 1 in a million shot that those breakaways are going to work, but it's 1 in 5 million that those guys are going to be able to win out of a sprint. So they figure we might as well try and go early.
Yeah, it's real life. It's emulated on RGT here, and you got to try it. Now, the advantage, if you can say that in finger quotes, to real life is you actually might get around the corner, whereas virtual racing, you can switch camera positions, you can go to the helicopter shot, and out of sight, out of mind is actually harder in the virtual world because, if nothing else, when you're riding in real life, you don't have a list of the competitors in front of you on the left side of your glasses. I know people are working on virtual displays and all that, but it ain't there yet. So you don't actually know, oh, he's just 25 meters up the road. And whereas in virtual racing, all that data is available. And data is great, especially if you have training goals, you have, you're trying to find some progression in your numbers. But it does kind of change the dynamic a little bit if you're trying to make a breakaway happen.
Frankie, that reminds me of when we're announcing in person and the breakaway always comes by and yells, or the field yells, like, what's the gap? Who's in the breakaway? Like we're going to read off 12 names with the time gap when they ride by next time. But you always want the data until you're the one in the breakaway, right? Until you don't want the data to be out there. So I don't know, maybe it's too much data for some riders. Makes it a little tougher to get away out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, a lot of times when we're announcing, I'm yelling back. It's like, I'm not your director. I don't know the time. I don't know how many guys are in the front. So I was like, figure it out. But, exactly what Todd just said, though, is exactly right. You see all that data on the left-hand side with all the names. So you know exactly who's in the group, who's in the front. That's a lot of information. Of course, in general, I would say, the more information, the better for the riders. But it does set the virtual world apart. And so you see this group that's off the back right there, trying to chase, trying to be able to get back up. Ferreira's about to get lapped, as we can see the rest of the riders just behind him. Still staying very bunched. It's nice to see, but the speed is just high. And so this is going to make it difficult to be able to get away.
Yeah, they have shed a good number of riders out of the back of this group, so we're starting to see those stragglers kind of linking up and form these chasing groups behind. So it sounds like there's maybe 3 or 4 different groups out there. We're just looking at some off the back, but especially in this short course, it's going to get a little chaotic here with riders getting lapped. You can always see the place that the rider is sitting in when we're following them with the camera drones out on course. It'll display, you see the 37 next to this name here, so that'll be their current place out on course. So if it gets confusing seeing riders out in front, those are probably going to be lapped riders, and you can always see if they have a double-digit number next to their name. Safe to say that those riders probably on their way back in. Todd, one of the cool things about virtual racing, though, we don't pull anybody. So in real life, sometimes for safety reasons or to make sure that the race can run smoothly, they have to pull riders off the course. But here in virtual racing, everybody gets to race the full distance.
Yeah, and with longer distance events or particular challenges, that's nice to have that goal, and you're not putting yourself in danger if you're lagging off the back. If you have to, it's not uncommon if you have a 4 or 5 hour trainer ride, first of all, good luck. But secondly, if you've got to take a nature break, you can hop off the trainer, take care of that, get back on the trainer, and continue riding. So, yeah, it does create opportunities to get that finishing sense of accomplishment. And then what you want to do, again, using the many metrics that are available, is take a look at that and say, okay, what was my average watts per kilogram? If you're a numbers person, how can I push that? What can I do to improve that? And maybe next time I'm going to try and stay with a group or the group, or I'm going to try and finish within X number of minutes, or I'm going to try and have a particular watts per kilogram average. And so, yeah, the virtual racing scene and virtual training in general gives you a lot more metrics, which makes structured training a lot easier. And so many people have really gone to the next level in terms of their structured training and goals during the last 12 months.
You want to talk about how easy it is to get caught out on RGT. This is Timmy Bauer off the back. Remember, we saw Bauer attacking off the front multiple times yesterday for the Above and Beyond Cancer presented by Bike World team. So this is one of two things for me. Either a lapse of judgment, maybe lost it in a corner, lost contact with the group, or a technical. He had a power dropout, an internet dropout, something like that. If you lose connection with the game, if your Wi-Fi drops out for just 2 seconds, it registers 0 power on the bike. And so if the field was going hard and all of a sudden your character just stops pedaling, you're going to be out of that group, and then it's going to be really hard to get back in. And Frankie, you know, you got kids. Normally when the internet goes out, it's not just for 2 seconds. It takes a little bit. You got to go adjust the rabbit ears or change the satellite dish on the roof or just unplug and replug the router, you know, whatever the fix is.
Yeah, you're resetting the modem, which could take about 5 minutes. And so Bauer, he's just riding easy. He knows his day is over, riding right now at about 1.2 watts per kilogram. So, but yeah, very surprising because how strong he was yesterday. And, you know, today's not his day. The other part I noticed that's interesting, and I'll say this, you know, the more the welcome, everybody's invited. But there's probably about 10 riders in this race, many of them off the back that aren't even on the registration list. And so that's a little bit different too. And so if this is their first race, and actually for a lot of those names, I'm not recognizing those names. It's probably their first race, at least their RGT race. Yeah, they're going to be in for a little bit of an eye opener. But again, you know, I think the more people that come into these races, the better. But there's about 10 or 12 riders that definitely are not on our registration list that are out here kind of trying to put the hammer down along with everybody else.
Tour of America's Dairyland marketing director Alyssa Weber over on YouTube giving away some swag. She's going to be giving away some Lowlands Grand Cafe swag. The Lowlands group has some awesome restaurants up in Milwaukee. Next person to comment on the thread will win some swag. Right on. Very cool. Alyssa over on YouTube. I think Alyssa's going to be joining us in our fan Zoom a little bit later in the day as well. They're going to be trying to give some stuff away on Zoom. You can find that link on the Tour of America's Dairyland Facebook page and kind of a watch party. See if we can link some of our Toad family up, link up some people that maybe miss racing. Question from Noah Seralt in the In Real Life Toad. What's the format? Is it just crits or also road races and TTs? Todd, last year we were 11 days of criterium racing straight through, which I got to say I'm a big fan of as a spectator. I know a lot of riders want some road racing in there, but 11 days of criteriums at the Tour of America's Dairyland. There is some good road racing around the Tour, though. If you want to go the week before, week after, you can find some local road races there. But, yeah, pretty much 11 days of crits straight through. I like it that way.
Yeah, and if we look back at the history books of the Tour of America's Dairyland, there have been road races. I was thinking about one this morning where it was, it was like tiptoeing over nitroglycerin with the sheriff's department. And, we tried to communicate to the riders, here's the yellow line rule. And so it was a great event, but it was really kind of stressful in terms of setting the parameters with the community, maintaining great community relationships, which is always our goal, but also creating a great event for the riders, which is as well one of the goals. And so it was challenging because we weren't able to get full closure, which is very hard to do these days, especially with working dairies all across Wisconsin. We did do an Eddie Merckx time trial one time, which was a ton of fun, a very interesting event. Not ruling it out, but right now crits are the bread and butter of the Tour of America's Dairyland. And this is what we're hearing from Euro and Aussie squads. They say, it's a big chunk of good, hard crit racing, and we want to do this before we head off to Europe for a racing season there or something like that. So, yeah, that is our bread and butter.
I want to bring race director Bill Koch in to talk a little bit about this. I'm a big fan of criterium racing, a criterium evangelist, if you will. I think one of the biggest advantages is the fact that we can integrate downtowns so well, the main streets of USA, and that's what makes it such a unique format of racing. But Bill, any plans for road races in the future? I mean, any chance that please don't make me commentate a time trial. Please don't make me announce a time trial anytime in the future. But how about any chance of a road race in the future?
Never say never. We've had some great experiences at Road America. That's a very controlled way to put on a road race, more of a circuit race. Actually, it's 4.1 miles. But Todd sort of explained the challenges of them. I think also from a crowd perspective and from a sponsor perspective, criteriums really are the bomb. I mean, they just give you everything you want in terms of appeal with fans, and everybody wants to see people. The riders want to see people along the sidelines cheering them on. Sponsors want to see a lot of people out on the streets. So crits are really our sweet spot. I will tell you, though, I'll give you a little advance heads up. It looks like we are going to do a juniors only time trial at the Milwaukee Mile this year on June 16th, if everything happens.
All right, you heard it here
first. So spectate that, Brad.
I'll be there.
I'll take
Thanks,
that one
Bill.
for you if you need me to, Brad. I'll take that one if you need me to.
All right, we'll send Todd down. That's cool. Junior series. You guys have had some other junior criterium series at Tour of America's Dairyland. I know every year we do sort of a block of junior specific racing where juniors have smaller age categories that they can race in.
Right. So we'll continue on with that this year. Billy Jones has been the generous sponsor mainly of this series since its inception. Probably 10 years now. This year, with the introduction of the Olympic Development Academy by USA Cycling, the drive right now, again, this is not official yet, but it looks good, is that they would bring one of their camps to Wisconsin for 8 or 9 days prior to the startup of Toad. So it makes it even more important for us to pull off the junior series. So we would start it a day early on Wednesday, and we'll race at the Milwaukee Mile. We'll do a time trial in the morning, Eddie Merckx style, and then a circuit race on the course. That's a 1.8-mile circuit. And then we'll open up in Janesville the next day and run Janesville, East Troy, Grafton, and what looks to be Waukesha again on Sunday.
That's awesome. Super important to have the opportunities for juniors to race as well. Thank you, Bill. Frankie, I know you know the importance of junior racing, seeing the junior riders around the country. If they don't have that opportunity to race, it's tough to get noticed, obviously. So it's a big deal when they get chances to race in front of big names. Bill was talking about maybe trying to get some of the USA Cycling coaches in there. But if you're trying to sign to a team, really the best way to do it is impress that team in real life. So maybe they take notice of you.
It's a great opportunity because it brings a lot of the best juniors from around the country to one area in order to be able to race, like at Tour of America's Dairyland or at like national championships. So if you can have an opportunity to gather these quality junior riders to race against each other, that is a big opportunity. And I guarantee you, a lot of these juniors will race the junior race. They'll go get something to eat and they'll hop right into the senior race. And we've seen, and I'm sure, Todd, you can comment on this, these juniors tend to beat up on the seniors nowadays. They're incredibly strong and incredibly fast. And so just because you're junior by title does not mean you're any less qualified to be able to win some of the seniors. It's been a lot of fun to watch how good a lot of these young riders are. And yeah, it's a big opportunity to expose themselves to other teams to get picked up to become a professional rider, which for many of them is a dream.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's a blessing and a curse for the Masters riders to watch these kids go out and thrash themselves on a crit course and recover in about 45 minutes. Because the Masters riders, they have to go lay down in the gutter somewhere and try and find their heart rate again. And these kids are just so resilient. But it is absolutely fun, and it's rewarding. You talk to the coaching folks that are working with these kids, that see them start developing tactic, start taking that racing to the next level, start working with a team. And then you look at the team cohesiveness. You look at these junior squads getting together and supporting one another and celebrating one another. That's just fantastic, really rewarding to see.
We have a couple of juniors in this race also, Brad.
Yeah.
A couple juniors also in this race. Yeah, sorry. And, coming down, what do you got, 15 kilometers to go? So 9 laps to go. See Warner in there trying to be able to go off the front. That's the big attack right now with 9 watts per kilogram. Bouchard Hall has proven he's a good sprinter. I mean, with a great result that he did yesterday, finishing second. Obviously, he took a win at the Indy Crit. Charlie Ravel is still there. So pretty much the who's who, the big names, have all managed to be able to stay in this group, and a lot of them right now are just they're resting, sitting in, resting, trying not to get gapped off the back, waiting for that final push.
We're coming up on 14 kilometers to go. When we have one lap to go, Bill Koch going to be ringing one of his 3 bells. Now, you may be wondering, why did Bill Koch ring 3 bells? Well, it is nationally known that when you're anywhere around Frankie Andreu, you have to keep an eye on your cowbell. It's just a known fact. So we bring in Frankie, and, I have this cowbell that I keep around for ringing one lap to go, throwing preems. And I look over, and Frankie is calling kids up onto the stage and saying, you want to ring the bell? You want to ring the bell? Just go down there and ring the bell. And I kind of need that, Frankie. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying calling these virtual races because there's actually a state line between me and the nemesis of my cowbell. And I'm watching you, Andreu. I'm watching you. And I've got my cowbell right here. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I can feel that I'm not getting the stinky eye like I normally would when I do steal the cowbell. And I'll admit, I steal the preem bell all the time, so I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
I have my name written inside all my cowbells now for one reason. Frankie Andreu. One reason only.
I'm moving all my investments into
3 cowbells.
I'm getting these new NFTs. Have you guys heard about these? I'm going to get a virtual NFT cowbell. I'll sell it to you, Frankie.
I could
for
use
$60 million.
There you go. Then I'll have my own cowbell. Yes. Yeah.
All right, looking at Hayden Warner here.
Anything. He'll steal it.
Yeah, exactly. Hack it off of me. Hayden Warner here on the front is tapping out a steady, like 6 watts per kilogram. You see him sitting right in the orange zone here, but doesn't look too stressed on camera. So he's in a good place right now. I think he looks pretty comfortable here. He's got a nice gap going off the front here. I'm surprised nobody went with him. Maybe a little early, but we are down to 7 laps to go here. So this will be a long launch, Frankie, at 7 laps. But maybe at 3-4 laps, could have done it solo. We'll see if he gets any help here, but I like the aggression from Hayden Warner here.
Well, again, above and beyond cancer, right? Setting things up, forcing some other teams to be able to chase. He's a pretty good climber. He was 3rd at the Gila Monster when they had that. He's from Iowa, so he's gonna try to keep it going. This is his move. This is his contribution to the team, and so I agree with you though. Looking pretty comfortable and just kind of waiting right now to see who's coming up, which is everybody. Blodgett leading the way, your winner from yesterday. Kind of leading the way. On the front right there is Aled Jones, and Aled Jones, he's currently a Royal Marines commander. Actually, 15 years Aled Jones has been a Royal Marines commander, and kind of got into cycling because he had an Achilles heel injury, and he suffered that when he was running. So that's kind of how Aled Jones got into cycling, and Aled Jones has had some good results on our virtual platform also.
We were talking about pain caves earlier. We had a decent shot showing all the pain caves the guys are in. Ceres, a great Wisconsin company with the MP1, the motion platform. We were also talking about the feel of riding on the bike. And Frankie, you mentioned yesterday that sometimes you got to get used to the fact that the trainer is no longer locked. It's not fixed, and there's actually some motion potential. And as you ride more, that motion is actually really helpful. The problem is, if you look at some of the pain caves that our racers are in right now, headroom becomes an issue. If you're in the basement and you add 6 inches underneath and you get out of the saddle to sprint, you and your noggin may be meeting up with the rafters above you, and then you've got to go into the Brad Soner concussion protocol. So not always possible, given the pain cave geometry, to grab that rocker plate technology, but when you can, it certainly is fun. Quick Trip prize pack going on in the fan room right now. Head on over to the fan room over on Facebook. Alyssa Weber, the marketing director for the Tour of America's Dairyland, hanging out there, handing out stuff from our fantastic sponsors, Quick Trip, one right near Shorewood and throughout the state of Wisconsin. Bill Koch's got his Glazer box probably down 2, N-2 on the Glazer box right now. He started out N-1 on this race, and nothing makes a race go by like a Glazer occasionally.
Hey, here's our fan Zoom checking in with Alyssa and company over in the Zoom. They just gave away their first prize pack. I see Eric Hill has joined in as well, and I think that's Chris Naven Swan Ure, the third one in there. Very cool. Right on. Welcome. Welcome to the Tour of America's Dairyland, guys.
Eric Hill with major hat action going on there. Major bill on that hat. That is next level hat game from E. Hill.
Yeah, Eric is in Fayetteville, Arkansas right now, getting ready for the Tour of America, or the Project Echelon team camp. We were out there for the virtual Joe Martin stage race earlier in the Echelon Racing League, and Project Echelon getting ready for some in real life training as they get ready for the season here in 2021. Right on.
Nice group right at the front of this race. 45 kilometers per hour, 10K to go. This is wide open. Everybody kind of keeping their powder dry right now, but all the names that we've been watching throughout the series, well, all right, with the exception of a couple that got shelled off early, present and accounted for. We're going to have a great finish here, Frankie.
Yeah, we had about 30 riders on the start line, and I talked about, like 10 of them weren't even on our registration list, and some of those struggled and were off the back. Still, though, our front group, probably 20, at least 20 strong, I would say, and like you just mentioned, it's the big names. You can see Matt Usborne in the upper right-hand corner, right below him, Bruce Bird. You can see Bouchard Hall in the bottom left, and so a lot of these guys setting up, they're trying to catch their breath. They're trying to take a little bit of a breather before they get ready for the final mad dash to the line with 6 laps to go. And right now, Team Restart, Team Tour 2000, Above and Beyond Cancer, all the big teams are starting to come together. They're trying to figure out their tactics, how to do the lead out or how to keep the pace high to set up their sprinters.
Seems like we haven't seen as much of those team attacks today as we did yesterday. I think Above and Beyond Cancer maybe let off the plan to try and hammer these guys over and over, Todd. They maybe learned their lesson yesterday. It worked out for Usborne on Thursday, didn't quite work for the team on Friday, so they readjust today on Saturday.
Well, you and Frankie both mentioned it early on that yesterday it was about the corners. When you have those corners, you attack out of the corners. A 4-corner crit, everything's a little bit more compact, and we're actually getting down to the pointy end of this race. There's one move going off the front right now. We're going to see if Blodgett can hold that as he went flying off, putting the numbers into the red. Hamblin, I think, is the one that actually initiated that move. So it's not without attempts. A little bit of a gap opening up. Let's see if the field closes that down quickly. Meantime, your opportunity to support these teams. What a great way to do this as well, because, these teams, they're looking forward to real-life racing. They're putting together the efforts, putting together the teams. WeAreNations.com, where you can go support your team, pick up those team products, and support the teams that are racing here today and the race that we're going to see racing in just a little bit in the women's race as well, with the para athletes sandwiched in between. Very excited about that.
Yeah, Hamblin, remember, was the director for Project Echelon yesterday. We heard him on Discord giving the guys some coaching, but racing out there today. So I'm not sure if he was racing while directing. I know some riders are able to direct and race at the same time, but a lot of directors prefer to just have their sort of multiple screens out in front of them and try and coach their guys along.
8K to go here. Frankie, I have a question for you as a former DS. Did you purposefully try and remain calm when you were talking to your guys over the radio? We're talking about a DS possibly riding. I'm not sure how calming it would be if some guys pushing FTP, breathing hard, and yelling into the radio, "Stay calm, stay calm." Does that even work?
No, I don't know how you could be a rider director. Just in some of the races that I've done and the rides that I do, the breathing, you're going so hard, and especially at this level. At this level, when you're putting out 5-6 watts per kilogram, all you can do is focus on breathing and the lactic acid in your legs. And so in general, though, yeah, as a director standing on the side of the road, sure, I would remain calm. But when they messed up, yeah, I raised my voice a few times, which would be normal. I mean, sometimes it's the only way to get across to them. But this is shaping up to be a fantastic group sprint coming up. And, Usborne has been very prevalent. I was just looking for Thomas. I hadn't seen Ben Thomas in there, but I noticed that he's just in the group. He's staying hidden. And so it's going to be very interesting compared to yesterday because of all the corners and the power they had to produce coming out of the corners. Today, 4-corner crit, long straightaways, what those average watts per kilogram are going to be after because I think it's going to be pretty low.
Yeah, honestly, that's a big part of why Ben Thomas is so successful in RGT, because we never talk about him during the day. He knows how to sit in, he understands how to save his energy, and he understands how to race efficiently, which is huge on this platform. So you're not going to see Ben Thomas riding like Melville here. Melville obviously doesn't want to sprint because we've seen him try and get off the front for the last 2 days. He's trying to go again for the third. Here goes Matt Usborne trying to split things up here. So at 6.7K out, Usborne going to try and attack. Now, I would have thought that he liked his chances in the sprint because that's how he won on Thursday. He won out of a field sprint, but looks like he's trying to split things up out there today.
Yeah, I'd say he's trying to reduce the size of that field sprint. There's so many guys up there that, if you feel you've got the energy to do it, break that up a little bit and maybe reduce the numbers going in the field sprint. We've been talking about the history of the Tour of America's Dairyland. I want to throw a shout-out to the Kenda squad that, Frankie, you directed. You were the DS of. And those guys spent a fair amount of time up on our podium. So hats off to you, sir. Well done. And part of the history, well done.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, Chad Hartley, obviously a big part of Wisconsinner, right? Big part of Tour of America's Dairyland has won the overall a few times. We had a great time coming up to Tour of America's Dairyland with the team and doing the races. It's just organized. It's fun. It's a great crowd. It's a great environment. And so, and you have multiple days of racing. I mean, you can't find anything like it anywhere in the United States. And so that was the big draw, and that's why we attended. And, and I still enjoy going back. I love announcing, and you can tell the riders have fun, and it's great joking around with them, interacting with them, which all three of us do. All three of us, I think, have a lot of fun talking with the riders and kind of, I don't want to say poking fun, but just enjoying the atmosphere and making it a lot of fun for them and for us.
Osborne's move dialed back in, so we are at 5.5 kilometers to go, and all present and accounted for. You have to go back to about, looks like there are 22 riders in this front group, and that is going to make for chaotic finishing in just 5 kilometers.
And one thing to keep in mind is that if you're in the back and you start to sprint, you're actually penalized on the RGT platform because you're coming up into the other rider too quickly, and it you kind of get the brakes put on. So positioning is important. I mean, you want to be able to get that draft, but if you're 15 guys back and you're starting to sprint, it's not going to allow you to just draft the 10 guys in front and have this big whiplash effect. RGT hits the brakes as you're running into the riders in front of you, and so positioning, very, very important.
Yeah, and same in the corners too. The spot that you are in the field affects how quickly you can go through the corners. The riders at the front are going to have a little easier time because they won't have to deal with traffic and collision avoidance. All that goes into the physics of RGT. So yeah, there's no steering in the game. The riders can't control whether they go left or right or where they go in the group. It's really just about how quickly you ease yourself through the group. There's a right and a wrong way to get to the front, and it's not just going to the back and then charging to the front. You want to kind of slowly move up through the group so that you're not wasting any watts. Again, it goes back to efficiency, like we were talking about with Ben Thomas earlier. Good look at 6 of the big riders in the Echelon Racing League here on the right-hand side of the screen. Everybody looking pretty calm here, and just a little bit of time out of the saddle here, just trying to cover those moves as Bruce Bird gets up to the front here. Frankie, again, a lot of it at this point at 3 laps to go is just about watching the screen and knowing when those corners are coming, making sure you're accelerating at the right time. It's the first 3 laps and last 3 laps of an RGT race are probably the 2 places you're most likely to get dropped.
Yeah, the corners are critical. Positioning is critical, and you can see a lot of these guys. That's why the speed just keeps going faster and faster. 40 kilometers per hour, 45 kilometers per hour. Everybody's trying to be in the front so they can kind of have a better transition and coast through the corners so that they can stay in the front and not have to get out of the saddle and accelerate. So it's 2 laps to go, and all the hitters are up here, and everybody's just surging to the front as Christopher Naveen comes up to the front right now. Blodgett, I'm not sure, that would be super impressive. I don't think we've seen anybody on the men's side actually repeat as winner from a field sprint. And so Blodgett with a big win yesterday, it'd be impressive if he can be able to repeat that. Bouchard Hall is definitely going to be a factor. We've seen him get up there in multiple criterium days.
Bill Koch, as the race director, has a lot of decisions to make every year for the Tour of America's Dairyland. Right now, he's faced with the conundrum of which one of his 3 bells is he going to be ringing up in 1/2 a lap. Bill, Godspeed, my friend. I know you can do it. We believe in you.
Well, we got 3 races today, so maybe he can use 1 for each race. We got the para race coming up after this, Pro Men, to wrap up the day. So, Bill, do you know which one you're going with yet? Have you made the decision on the first bell of the day?
I'm going with
He's
2
doubling
just in case
up.
one doesn't work.
Okay, that's good. A backup bell. I like it.
Or in case Frankie snags one as you're ringing it at the last minute.
Right, exactly. Always got to be careful. All right, well, you might need it sooner rather than later because I got a couple riders sitting on the front here on the attack, led by Kevin Bouchard Hall. So Bouchard Hall and Millar are taking a look off the front. Just 2 guys, though. They do have a little bit of a gap here at 2.5K. But looks like the field's going to be able to chase them down. Todd, I don't think you let anyone go at this point. I mean, you'd have to be crazy.
Not. No, absolutely not. So they're through the wiggle. They're heading into turn 4. They're going to take this left-hander. They're going to see the banner. Bill's going to double bell him for 1 lap to go here in Shorewood. Anybody going off the front is immediately going to be sucked back in. It's kind of suicide to try and roll off the front of this group. Around turn 4, heading to the line, getting ready to ring them up for 1 lap to go.
It's going to get fast out there as well. As you see the banner up in the distance, Jones going to try and lead him through, but he'll get swarmed at the line as we send him out for the final lap of racing. Let's get that bell going, Bill.
1 to go, 1 to go, 1 to go!
Authentic yelling, too. I like it. Thank you, Bill. I think Tom Schuler started that tradition for the race directors yesterday, that you have to yell 1 to go as well. That I think he was the first one to do that, so I like it. The Tour of America's Dairyland promoters got a lot of spirit, a lot of enthusiasm for the event. That's what I'm talking about.
I like it too. It adds to the experience. So Ben Miller from Team Tour 2000 was attacking, and then we see Aled Jones from Team Tour 2000 come up, continuing to push the pace. Charlie Velez right there in the black jersey out of the saddle, making sure he's able to stay up near the front. Bouchard Hall is in there. See Patrick Wall, see Bruce Bird, and then Usborne in the upper left-hand corner. Now, Usborne won on day number 1. He was 3rd on day number 2. So he's just brute force. He's just the bull that kind of goes through a china shop and makes his way to the front line. And so got to watch out for him. Definitely going to be active on this last half lap.
All about positioning. Again, as you see the guys just trying to slowly make their way up to the front. Watch how they let off once they get there. You can see that some riders don't look like they're going too hard, and some riders are exploding, like Kevin Bouchard Hall up on the top of the screen right there, because he's trying to close a gap. He's trying to make sure that he stays in the draft, stays in the wheel, which a lot of times is the hardest part of this game. The sprints are significantly different in virtual racing than they are in real life. Whether you're on Zwift, RGT, Be Cool, whatever the platform is, it's nothing like a real-life sprint. I mean, it's just completely different timing, completely different tactics. You don't have to worry about actually trying to find a line and follow the wheel. So here we go, 500 meters. Millar going again, and some new names up at the front. Rijkaard and Sands joining us this weekend for racing, and they're going to try and jump out early here, Frankie.
Yeah, and incredible. You can see the speed as they increase it to the line. I mean, we're at 48 minutes of racing. Yesterday took an hour and 5 minutes of racing, so a much faster course. Sands trying to be able to hold them off. Rijkaard now trying to be able to come around, but it looks like Miller, and here they come from the back. Of course, the surge from the main pack coming across the line, and it's going to be another bike throw, and it looks like Henry Warner is going to take it right in front of Jamrazak. What a ride from Warner, and it's Above and Beyond Cancer coming back with another win.
Above and Beyond Cancer gets a second win on the weekend. I think Warner was on the podium with Matt Usborne on Thursday, and this time he's going to move to the top step for Above and Beyond Cancer as we confirm Hayden Warner, your race winner today.
We saw him earlier just kind of sitting in and just riding, and it's pretty impressive sprint for him to be able to come through. Timed it out perfectly. I thought the first two guys were actually going to stay away, but Todd, you've seen it. When you take an early flyer from 400 meters to go, it's hard to keep the legs and keep the speed to be able to get to the finish line first.
Yeah, completely different animal. Yesterday, we saw the teams sending people up the road, other teams responding, trying to take advantage of the many turns in yesterday's course. Today, not so much. And so it turned into the equivalent of the IRL racing, where the name that's first across the line is not necessarily one that you've called during the rest of the race. Yeah, the teams have folks that are up there doing the front bits, but somebody's keeping their powder dry, and in this case, it was Mr. Hayden Warner from the ABC squad.
You see Warner jumping on Discord, letting the team know that he got it. And I'm sure thanking the guys from Above and Beyond Cancer. They have a lot of communication on their Discord. They're probably one of the most active teams when it comes to in-race action. I think they probably talk more than any other of the men's teams out there. We had a chance to listen in on some of the Discords over the last few weeks, and these guys are just a pretty well-organized machine. So really impressive riding. Frankie, these guys they got a lot of weapons out there that they can use.
It's amazing. Above and Beyond Cancer has a toolbox full of speedsters and strongmen. And if you don't forget, Warner was the guy, he was in that breakaway by himself, waiting for someone to come up. He did, a couple laps, 2 or 3 laps all by himself, putting out some big watts. And that seemed to take nothing out of his legs, but a very impressive sprint by Hayden Warner there.
Another difference between virtual and real-life racing, when you're coming across the line first in a real-life race, if you have time, you zip up the jersey before the line. In virtual racing, you zip up the jersey after the line. That's okay, though.
All right, let's see if we can go into our Zoom room and grab a word with our Pro Men's race winner, Hayden Warner, from the Above and Beyond Cancer Squad. Hayden, congratulations on the win out there today. Above and Beyond Cancer having a great weekend at the Tour of America's Dairyland.
Oh, man, the guys are riding so great. It's so good to see. It's been a long series. We've been fighting the whole way. And now, putting a lot of stuff together this weekend, and kind of a hometown race for us. It's only 4 hours down the interstate, so I think that counts as hometown, right?
Was this part of the plan for Above and Beyond Cancer? I mean, was it kind of payback for you helping Matt on Thursday? Were you guys trying to get you a win today, or was it just sort of whoever's strongest at the end today?
These races can be so unpredictable and so exciting that it's kind of, we have a plan during the race, and whoever's near the finish line, we have kind of a lead out train usually, and I got kind of stuck out on the last lap in a few corners and just got super lucky that the field parted just right for me to come through, but it could have just as easily been any of the other boys today.
We've done some 2-day criterium races. We had some long 3 and 4 day stage races, the road races here in the Echelon Racing League. But what has 3 days of crits been like? How you feeling heading into day 4 tomorrow?
Oh man, so this is my first day of the series. I was on vacation, took a little bit of an off season, so to come back, get a few easy days under my belt, and ride with the team like this, I can't ask for any more than that.
All right, I'll put you down as fresh legs straight off vacation. Hayden, congratulations on
fresh legs
the win today.
And 5 pounds heavier. Good combination.
All right, congrats, Hayden. A great weekend for Above and Beyond Cancer. Will we see you out there tomorrow? Will you plan on racing, continuing tomorrow?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a good time.
All right, Warner looking to defend.
Brad.
We'll see you out there.
Thanks to all the sponsors of the team. They've all been great. Above and Beyond Cancer Bike World, Giant, Oakley, all the people who support us. It's been really great. So thanks a lot, Brad.
It's been a blast having you guys here. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Well, there you go, Frankie. Right off vacation, pick up some pounds and pick up a win as well, as Hayden Warner goes 4.36 watts per kilogram on the day for Above and Beyond Cancer. Daniel Jamrozic held on for second for Restart Racing, and then Chris Naven in third for Triple X Racing Athletico. Ben Thomas, fourth place, the overall leader in the series for Team Tour 2000 presented by Callis. And then it doesn't look like Matt Usborne made the top 10 out there today, maybe riding in support of Hayden Warner today. But boy, what a weekend for Above and Beyond Cancer so far, Frankie.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job of putting together a very strong squad with, as I mentioned, different riders that can sprint or get into attack. And Hayden Warner, I'm impressed. He didn't just sit in. That's probably why his watts per kilogram are a little bit higher than some of the other riders, because he was off in that breakaway by himself, just kind of going for it. And he still had the legs at the end. And he admits, and I say the virtual world is probably the only, spot where putting on 5 pounds probably is not going to hurt you too much, because you can just pound on that trainer a little bit harder, especially in a criterium.
Yeah, it's easy to burn off on the trainer. You just spend a little bit of time, that 5 pounds will be gone. That's 5 pounds of sweat, no problem, easy. All right, as we wrap up our pro men's race, getting ready for our next 2 races of the day, we got para racing coming up next as we premiere virtual para racing here at the Echelon Racing League, and our pro women going to be wrapping up after that. So we're going to take a short break here from the virtual Tour of America's Dairyland, and we'll be back with more racing after this.
As an athlete, getting marginally better is one thing. Getting exponentially better puts you in a whole new ballgame. Biomoto uses a proprietary digital process to capture movement at 200 frames per second and 70 sensors per foot to measure ground-based forces, resulting in advanced motion analysis that's up to 10 times more accurate than orthotics. It's the data generated by this process that allows Biomoto to construct custom insoles that make athletes faster, stronger, and more stable, and results in an unprecedented 95% success rate.
The world is changing.
I'm looking to do things better.
To improve.
Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's right.
I embrace change.
I seek adventure and discovery.
I explore the unexplored.
To know the unknown.
Even in the toughest moments, we ride together.
Even in the moments when we're at our limits,
We support each other. It's time to move up a level.
push that little bit harder.
Changes we make now will make the future better for all.
The efforts we put in today
Will pay dividends tomorrow.
We all have the power to up the game.
To build something better.
It's not time to play.
It's time to get real.
It's time to be a game changer.
The 2020 Virtual Tour of America's Dairyland is brought to you by Quick Trip, going the extra mile for you. By Project Echelon, educating, equipping, and empowering veterans through physical activity. By Hyper Ice, move better and enhance your recovery with Hyper Ice. And by Nations, enhancing the reach of esports, including the Echelon Racing League. As we wrap up the pro men's race, Brad Soner here with Frankie Andreu and Todd Bastide getting ready for our para racing and then our pro women's race coming up after that. Todd, this is super exciting to have para racing in the virtual world here. We looked around. We didn't find a whole lot of virtual para racing opportunities, so this is going to be really exciting. We're going to have a chance to meet some pretty impressive riders. We're going to have a chance to see some of their setups, see how they're adapting to racing here in the virtual world, and see some pretty exciting racing and some pretty impressive performances. So if this is anything like what we see at the real life Tour of America's Dairyland, this is going to be an exciting race.
Well, I think it's going to be like it, but I think it's also going to be even better, Brad, because there, as we've been alluding to, there's not a lot of virtual racing that's being offered for the para classification. So by virtue of putting this into play, we're breaking new ground. And I'm excited about the fact that we're creating racing opportunities that don't require these athletes to overcome the challenges of travel and logistics. We talked about it a little bit yesterday in preparation for today's race. When you go to a race, you got to make sure you got your helmet, your nutrition. And for the para athletes, that list is a little bit longer. And so it's even more challenging. Plus, with the restrictions of travel that are in place right now, there's not a lot of that going on in any world. So by creating a virtual opportunity for these para athletes, it's fantastic. We at the Tour of America's Dairyland are excited about it. Our sponsors were, that's fantastic. Let's do that. So really getting behind it. So this is going to be great.
And Frankie, this will be a nice way to prepare for what is hopefully some in real life racing coming back soon. Get some training going, but kind of ease back into racing here before we get outside, hopefully this summer.
Well, for many of the paracyclists and the hand cyclists, they have that competitive instinct, just as the real, just as everybody else. And so they're looking forward to getting back in real life. And this is a way to kind of, test their power, test their speed, just as everybody else has been doing on the virtual platform. And yeah, I mean, maybe this is, the first ever virtual hand cyclist race, which I think is fantastic. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch, and I think it'll be just as exciting as when we watch in real life, except just like with the other virtual riders, no crashing.
That's the best part of virtual racing, I guess. No crashing and no travel, right, Todd? Looks like our fan Zoom is starting to get some more people joining as they get ready to cheer on our virtual riders. Don't forget, you can join Alyssa and the entire crew over there in the fan Zoom. They have the link on the Tour of America's Dairyland Facebook page. They're going to be giving away prizes all day over in the fan Zoom. So just check in, find that link on the Tour of America's Dairyland website. They've got prize packs from our partners Quick Trip and Subaru, and all you got to do is check in and get your prizes there. So it'd be cool to see more people joining them over on the fan Zoom. Looks like everyone's got their cowbells. They're all showing off the cowbells, getting ready. Maybe we'll have a fan cowbell ringing. Maybe we can. I'm not sure if we can arrange the logistics of that for the para race or the women's race coming up. But we'll try it. That would be cool. I would love to see them. All right, we are just about 30-ish, little under 30 minutes away from our para racing getting ready to roll. So let's take a short break. We'll take one more break here before we get into para racing, and then we'll be back at the Tour of America's Dairyland.
My name is Dr. Alan Lim. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I've spent most of my career working with professional cyclists. For years, I've been getting riders to ride on static trainers that don't move. But now with the Infinity technology by Ceres on the MP1 platform, you have fore-aft movement as well as side-to-side movement that ultimately greatly enhances comfort. Every single contact point can move in a more natural way, and over the long haul, what that means is you don't get beat up by your static trainer. With just that little bit of motion, you start to replicate what you feel in the outdoors, and that changes the entire experience. I think that one of the big reasons for that is that we're naturally tuned to want to move. Our vestibular system, when it's activated, ends up, creating, I think, a sense of harmony or joy that just isn't the same when you're not able to move. It's like the difference between a rocking chair versus a static chair. And a lot of it, I think, is about expectation, because when you get it on a bicycle, you expect it to move. And so when you get on the MP1 platform with the Infinity technology, you get that same level of movement. 6 degrees side to side, 9.5 inches fore and aft. And what that does is it creates an experience that is just so much more enjoyable, so much more fun than being on a static trainer. When you look at the design of the MP1 platform, it's not just designed for the H3 trainer by Ceres. It's also designed to be compatible with almost every new smart trainer currently on the market. So if you don't own the H3, but you have your own trainer at home, odds are this will be compatible with the MP1. Another unique feature of the Infinity technology on the Ceres MP1 platform is that it's best in class. You have 6 degrees of side-to-side motion and 9.5 inches of fore-aft motion. That's movement that specifically replicates what you feel outdoors, and there's no other competitor on the market that can simulate that type of movement. It's certainly not the kind of movement that you can get by just putting tennis balls under your trainer. Cycling isn't just about your legs and your lungs. It's also about being able to handle the bicycle, and that takes a lot of control in both your core as well as all of these small stabilizer muscles. On an indoor trainer that is static, you're just not getting any of that specificity. But with the Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform, you are able to use and have to use all of those stabilizers to control the bicycle. The net effect is that not only do you get a workout for your legs and your lungs, but you also get a workout for your core. The Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform creates the best-in-class movement for any trainer system. You've got 6 degrees of side-to-side movement, 9.5 inches of fore-aft movement, and the net result is way more comfort, way more fun, the ability to use your core or stabilize your muscles, and you've got a platform that is compatible with most trainers.
All right, we are out here, Camino Escuela in Tucson, Arizona, for the first ever Camino Escuela Hill Climb Championships. Competitors here. Sean is going to be rocking the e-bike, the new Subito e-bike, weighing in at like 30 pounds, an additional, I don't know what that does, 200 watts. Heather, all natural. The course, I mapped it out earlier, it's about 1.3 kilometers. I think it gains about 30 to 40 meters. That's around 100 feet, and it's just short of a mile. Yo! Shooting at the demons, see your dreams, making them more fun. Yeah. And if you wanna run away from the best you've done, yeah, I'll be there to save the day. I'll be your rising sun.
Have you ever had a feeling that, like, there's no hope anymore? And then someone walks in your life and just light it up, or more like screw it up again? Well, I guess this is the main reason why I'm writing this song. I heard you calling, I saw your sleepless face and I felt hard. I guess I'm falling for you, girl, I can reach the stars. Now. Oh, the nights we couldn't sleep, was there carrying my gun, shooting at the demons, see your dreams, making them more fun. Yeah. And if you wanna
I'll be your rising sun.
All right, that just happened.
Yeah, I'm the champ. That was crazy. I mean, I hit my button and she had no chance.
I thought I was dropping you. And you were just messing
I was
with
stretching, getting ready for my effort. I did a little bit of this, one of these, and then I just went.
We thought you were like getting dropped too. I was like,
This is how it feels. I feel so powerful right now.
And welcome back. Getting ready to resume racing here at the virtual tour of America's Dairyland with our para-athletes getting ready to roll here. Just wrapped up our pro men's race a little bit ago. We are about 10 minutes away from race start here for para-athletes as we get ready to make history here in what we think is one of the first professional para-virtual races on offer here at the Tour of America's Dairyland. Project Echelon coming together to do 2 days of racing. I want to welcome to the show Ian Lawless with U.S. Paracycling, who has been a driving force in bringing races like the Tour of America's Dairyland into the paracycling fold. Ian, thanks for being here. Am I correct in thinking that we haven't seen any virtual para racing? I mean, have you guys done any professional para racing yet?
We haven't done any at this level. We've done a little bit, just kind of more weekly type stuff. So this is great to see a large contingent of para athletes participating today. It's awesome.
So, Ian, talk to me about the importance of the opportunity to race here, because I know you talk a lot about this in real life races as well. Having the opportunity to circle that competitive date on your calendar is big for a lot of these riders. I know it's been in flux both for our U.S. Olympic athletes, our Paralympic athletes getting ready. It's been a crazy year, but it seems like we're kind of slowly getting back to normal, and maybe this will be a good way to ease back into real life racing and training.
Absolutely, and the timing is great for our athletes, sort of their return to racing, as we really look towards what would typically be the start of their road season. Great opportunity for them to really just kind of get the engines fired up today, and I think they're super excited. We are also preparing for the start of in-person competition in April. We'll be in Huntsville, Alabama for a big event there, so this is a great tune-up for them, and I think everyone's just really thrilled to be able to just kind of test the waters and see how things go for them.
I would imagine the COVID shift was a pretty big change for the para athletes, obviously delaying a lot of the competition. How were you guys able to support those athletes in this, what was a very chaotic time over the last year?
Yeah, interestingly, and I'm sure you've heard this from other teams as well, I've probably talked to our national team athletes more over the last year than probably I would in a typical season, just trying to keep everybody connected. And I've been super proud of our athletes. They've maintained a good consistency of training, but also just been really flexible as everyone's really needed to be. They haven't raced on the road. They didn't race at all on the road in 2020. The last competition we did internationally was the Track World Championships way back in January of 2020. So just trying to keep everybody connected, and they've all been really positive. And I think now with this opportunity here with Tour of America's Dairyland, and then ultimately getting back on the road here in a month or two, this is just the momentum they all really need right now.
All right, let's talk about some of the athletes joining us today for our virtual racing. Some of these names I know from in real life racing at the Tour of America's Dairyland, but we're going to be meeting some new names as well. And I want to talk about these teams as well. U.S. Paracycling, the cycling team. We'll also see the Paralyzed Veterans of America racing team, the PVA squad. Will have a big showing here. Some familiar names. I know Charles McDonald. I see him racing around the country a lot. Anyone else we should be looking out for here today?
Yeah, in our paracycling race, you'll see Jason Kimball racing today, and he's actually typically a track rider, but he's been just like a lot of people changing things up over the last year or so. So he is one to watch in the paracycling race on the hand cycling side. I saw Gerard Alfouk's name on there. He's kind of a veteran racer. You see Ken Bastine, another guy who's been around a long time. And then you see Alicia Dana racing for the Team CAF squad. She is a former world champion, Tokyo 2020 Paralympic hopeful. So a lot of great athletes we're going to see racing today, and some people with some pretty impressive resumes who've been racing a really long time.
I know John Haupt also joining us. Is he on this list for the MS Just Keep Moving squad? John has been a driving force in bringing para racing to the Tour of America's Dairyland, including hosting the national championships last time we were there in 2019. So nice to see John out here and competing with the MS Just Keep Moving squad. Again, John has been a local legend at the Tour of America's Dairyland. So nice to see that paying off for him today. Ian, great turnout I was really happy to see so many riders taking the opportunity here. We've also got a lot of riders participating in our Zoom room, so we're going to have a chance to see a lot of different ability levels out there today. I want to, if you would, just take us briefly through the different categories that we'll see racing. Let's talk about our course profile first before we get to that. For these riders in Shorewood, this is actually a perfect course for the para-athletes. It's very wide, it's flat, and the roads are nice and smooth. So those are some of the things we look for a good para-crit course. But even in Shorewood, these riders get close together. I mean, we'll talk about bump drafting a little bit, but on a criterium course like this, they're really going to be drafting in those straightaways.
Absolutely, Brad. And
so this course at just over a mile, 1.2 miles of total racing as we go on board with our 2018 Pro Men's onboard course. Ian, the thing that I'm maybe looking forward to on this course will be the little chicane that we have on coming out of what I think is turn 3 into what would be turn 4. We'll call it turn 3.5 through here. But the handling on these bikes gets pretty important. So we'll talk about the different bike types that the riders use, but these guys can whip around the corners pretty fast.
Absolutely, and when you talk about the hand cycles, they are such a low center of gravity. They can just really fly through the corners without scrubbing any speed on the entry to the corner, and it's pretty amazing to see the speed they're able to take out of these turns.
And then the sprint to the finish line as they make it around the last turn, where just got to try and power up to the finish line in Shorewood. All right, let's talk about the classifications, racing, and the categories out there. We're going to hear about C1 through C5, H1 through H5, and then there's also T and B classifications. Ian, tell us, start with the difference between C and H category racing.
Yeah, C categories are really our athletes with physical disabilities who ride two-wheel bikes, so it could be a standard racing bike with or without an adaptation. And those athletes have various levels of disability, from everything from a leg amputation to an arm impairment to some balance issues. And so we'll see a lot of different athletes with a lot of different impairments in that group. And then our hand cycle group are generally our wheelchair athletes who have lower mobility impairments and are powering their equipment with basically their upper body, not only their arms, but depending on their level of injury, they're able to use as much of their upper body as they can and they can employ. And that's really the difference between those two groups, two very distinct groups between the C bikes and the H bikes.
So we have asked the riders to put their category in their name on RGT. So we'll do our best to pick out the different categories of riders out there. We do have two different races going today. The hand cyclists and the paracyclists will be racing in separate virtual worlds out there. So they'll be scored separately. So our H category and C category riders will have individual scoring for the two classifications. So we saw some riders on the Zoom camera there earlier, but let's take a look at our leaders on course, as this looks like chipping taking off early as we go inside our hand cycle race now. So it's like chipping out of the UK taking an early lead here.
Yep, followed by Ken Bestine and Alicia Dana right behind him. So I think we have 3 different women's riders today. Alicia Dana, former world champion, right there up in the front.
Yeah, so you see the MH3 for Bestine. That's men's hand cycle 3, and then Alicia Dana, WH3 in the women's hand cycle 3 category. So looks like they're going to link up and ride together here for at least a little bit in second and third out there. Now, Ian, talk to me about how these riders get hooked up to the trainer. I imagine just like getting settled into your real-life bike, it takes some tinkering to get the trainers set up, to get the power meters and everything set up. For the most part, though, the core elements are there for these riders. They have the power meters on the bikes. All they have to do is get it hooked up into these virtual racing platforms.
That's exactly right, and our paracyclists are the MacGyvers of the bike racing world for sure. The main difference, for example, if you're looking at a hand cycle, is that the drivetrain is upside down, and therefore the trainer, the smart trainer, for example, also needs to be upside down, particularly if it's a direct drive trainer. So the setup is not different other than that. For the trainers, there's usually an adaptation they have to make. I've seen riders hang it from a underneath side of a coffee table, or have a professional stand made to hang that trainer upside down and then connect their bike to it. So it's always some degree of figuring stuff out, but our athletes live for that stuff, and once they get that thing connected, then it's really not any different in terms of measuring power and just going for it.
I want to bring back in Todd Bastide and Frankie Andreu. Frankie, we've seen these machines in action at the Tour of America's Dairyland. Or Todd, sorry, I want to talk to you because we were there at Shorewood last year. The thing that I noticed most is the sound. They have the carbon wheels on the back, and a lot of times it's 2 disc wheels on the back. It makes an incredible noise when you hear these machines coming past you.
Yeah, it's like something out of Hollywood, because if you're standing on the boards and you're not looking down, you have this sound coming towards you, and then there's this whoosh. And the hand cyclists are so low, so aerodynamic, and the top athletes are going to be carrying so much speed. It really is exciting to see them go by. And then you mentioned bump drafting. And unfortunately, we're not going to have a representation of that in the virtual world, but this is one of the exciting elements, because these guys actually have equipment built onto their hand cycles that allow them to be in contact with the rider in front, bump drafting, so there's no wheel contact. There's actually bump bars that protect the wheels from touching the other wheels, but they, in addition to being so low to the ground and aerodynamic, are actually connected with one another aerodynamically and drafting as they make their way around the course.
Frankie, I know you've seen this racing. They'll stick right on the wheel, even into the corners. It's amazing how smooth they can draft through those corners, and there's a lot of trust involved. Just like when you're drafting off of anyone, you really got to trust that wheel in front of you.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hand cycling and paracycling as I was coach for the Marines for many years for Warrior Trials and Warrior Games, and also worked at the Invictus Games for a couple of years. And so it's super impressive, all of these athletes, and the technology that goes into from recumbents, uprights to the hand cycles, custom made seats. You talked about the disc wheels, the carbon fiber wheels. I mean, it's just high end, and a lot of that just directly applies to going fast. And it's amazing as you talk about the drafting, which they're going to be able to take advantage to, especially on this 4-corner course. It's going to be what they're used to, is getting in that draft and taking turns working at the front. But, their dedication and perseverance and just kind of pushing forward is always fun to be able to watch. And it's always super competitive racing.
Ian, talk about a little more about some of these machines. I know we talked about getting the trainer and the drivetrain set up properly with the inverted drivetrain for a lot of riders, but on the back, most of them are running 700C wheels. Is that right? What would be a standard road wheel?
Yeah, the trend is moving towards 700C wheels. In the past, there was a lot of different size wheels. However, depending on the category, the wheels in the back these days are actually small, whereas the drive wheel is a 700 wheel. The wheels in the back now are 20 inches, and that's just for aerodynamic purposes. And just like you see in professional racing, our international federation or the governing body sets the rules, and then the athletes push the envelope as far as they can in terms of trying to be more aerodynamic and trying to, get that free speed wherever they can. So I think the other thing, someone was talking a minute ago about the sound you hear when they come by, and ultimately when you have 3 carbon fiber wheels instead of 2, and they're all low to the ground like that, it really does sound like a jet engine almost sometimes when they come up, especially when you don't see them coming.
And then talk to me about the interface, where we would talk about a saddle kind of leaning back, but the place where you put your hands on the hand cycle, what is that like? Are they clipped in there? Is it a strap, or is it just personal preference?
Yeah, their hands are actually not allowed to be connected, so they just pedal with a rounded handle that is either a carbon fiber or sometimes an aluminum piece. It's actually pretty low tech. The big difference, though, with the hand cycles is that rather than alternate pedaling, the hands are together, so they're pushing at the same time with both pedals, as opposed to on a standard bike where it's opposing.
All right, well, as we keep an eye on our hand cyclists up in the top two boxes, you see the leader up in the top left and our two chasers up in the top right. I want to go on board with John Haupt. This is from the Tour of America's Dairyland back in 2019. Todd, this is the bump bar that you were talking about at the bottom here. It's super important in drafting, but it's so impressive to watch these riders. I mean, you want to talk about some guts. Getting right up on these bump bars is crazy.
All right, so another thing I love about this, obviously, looking at this, the lower you are to the pavement, the higher the perception of speed. So right away, I mean, just looking off the back of John's machine, you have this sense that he's ripping it around the course. Now, he's got his number right there, but in that pack racing mentality, you're going to see the riders coming right up and touching that bump bar as they're making their way around the course. Now, this rider coming around, he's got an opportunity to pass. You'll see the different race numbers, so we have those different categories. With the hand cycles, as you mentioned, H1 through H5, and so you have the different races within the race. Very exciting stuff. Let me pivot here and talk about the elephant in the room, because we've got hand cyclists out on our RGT platform, and yes, the discussion is, where's the hand cyclist avatar? We are so looking forward to having the developmental bandwidth within the virtual racing platform. And again, a lot of this stuff is just jumping into place over the last 12 months. So a lot of discussion on all the virtual platforms about when can hand cyclists get an avatar that represents what they actually look like. So it is a conversation that's being had. It is a conversation that we're looking forward to the resolution of. Now, of course, the C1 through 5 categories, upright bikes with some kind of impediment, as Ian was outlining for us. So we're kind of in the right ballpark there, but we're all really looking forward to continuing and expanding hand cycling racing with an avatar that's actually going to represent the hand cyclists. Continuing with John down Wisconsin Boulevard. On the left-hand side, Brad, we're going to see a bar that is called, what's it called, Brad? Here's the quiz. What's it called?
Redheads.
There you go. Brand new condominiums on Wisconsin Avenue in Grafton. This was the national championship. There we are. Stage on the right, Redheads on the left, and John has just completed one lap. So much fun to watch these guys race, and there, watching that video, you get a sense of the speed perception that they're actually experiencing being down low to the pavement.
All right, moving over to our para races. Now we're with the hand cyclists earlier. This is going to be Sanchez up at the front with looks like Charles McDonald sitting in second. Look at this chase group here. 2, 3, 4, and 5 all together. Ian, this is pretty typical of para racing. We see a lot of small groups forming. A lot of times you see a solo rider that gets away, but you'll see a lot of riders kind of form that group to chase down Mark Anthony Sanchez here.
Yeah, very typical of paracycling races where you'll see these small groups form and action really right away, right? We're wasted no time in putting in a move here, and we'll kind of see how things shake out. The other interesting thing here is I think we have a variety of different classifications mixed in here. So where internationally, for example, they would sometimes be separated, you've got the potential for a little different dynamic here with the different categories mixed together.
Yeah, maybe racing against some new riders as well, whereas normally you wouldn't race against riders from other categories, I guess. They would usually separate those out with their start times a lot of times. But, yeah, mixing everyone together here at the virtual Tour of America's Dairyland. So it looks like this group going to stick together pretty well here. I think they've got this locked in at 2nd through 5th. So this will be an interesting battle to watch here. These guys doing 15 15 laps of racing on the course. So our leader, Mark Anthony Sanchez, looking at about 6.5K to go. Frankie, the fitness still has to be here, even though they're propelling the bike a different way. This becomes a very anaerobic sport very quickly. I know your time coaching para and hand cyclists. It's really important to build up that engine.
Yeah, and they've done a great job doing that. I mean, Sanchez, look at the power he's putting out, 350 watts. And so Mark Anthony Sanchez, he races for the Audi cycling team out of Oregon and is a blind tandem pilot. And actually, he was a pilot and a flight instructor with the Navy for the P-8A and the P-3C aircraft. And so he knows how to fly fast, and that's exactly what he's doing right now as that chase group is trying to be able to bring him back. But all of these riders are definitely, they're used to training in, endurance, resting, intervals, threshold. They train the exact same way as anyone else, and it's applying here in the virtual world.
So looking at our two different races here on our screen right now, the two boxes on the left-hand side of the picture are the hand cyclists. The two boxes on the right-hand side of the picture are going to be the paracyclists. So the C classification riders over on the right side and the H classification riders on the left side. Looks like both solo leaders and then some chase groups behind them for second here, Todd. So this is not an enviable place to be, sitting solo out in front with so much talent trying to chase you down.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different classification of racing, but it's the same RGT platform, and the physics are the same. If you're tucked into a group, you're working less. If you're going solo, you're working more. And Frankie was talking about the fitness. There are interesting challenges. I mentioned my friend Joe Bernie, who is a C category athlete and has done very well at 2 Paralympics, brought home some medals. And, for him, sprinting is one of his strengths. Think about that. If you're sprinting and you're trying to develop your sprint strength, you've got shoulders, you've got this this virtual loop you're creating with your arms to the drops, and that's where you get the core anchor from which to then apply power to the pedals. Take away one side of that, take away one of those arms, and instantly you get a sense of the overdevelopment that you have to do with the side that is there. Joe's got a very strong, they call him Lefty, that's his nickname, and his left side is incredibly strong as a result of working on developing that one-sided anchor from which he can lay down Paralympic medal-winning sprints.
Ian, Joe, part of our Paralympic track team. I know I brought home some gold medals there. We're kind of doing virtual road racing here, but the track program for the U.S. Paralympics is pretty strong as well. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, we have a really strong track program, really led by, as you mentioned, Joe Barony out of Oswego, Illinois, and he is a multi-time world champion in the kilo. And that's where he gets that speed, particularly the leg speed, as you see. And on the track, even harder to manage that bike and all the forces that come into play with one arm. But we competed in the last time, as I mentioned, we competed as a national team was at the World Championships in Milton in January of 2020. We came home, I think, with 13 medals. So really strong on the track, and we're actually, I think, a little bit better on the road in terms of our success, but our track program is starting to really progress, and I think within a few years here, they'll be equally as strong across our road program and our track program.
Yeah, you talked about adapting to the track. I have to imagine that's tough with the banked velodrome to get the balance in. You're pulling those G's almost on the way around, as Todd was talking about, trying to tune your core. That's got to be a big part of it for the track cyclists.
Yeah, and most of our athletes are asymmetrical in some way. So you mentioned Joe, for example, has just the left arm to hold onto the bike. We have other athletes who have both upper and lower limb impairments on one side. We have some athletes who have, believe it or not, a lower limb impairment on one side and an upper limb impairment on the other side. So it's all about trying to figure out how you manage your bike around that velodrome at really high speed in an asymmetrical way. And it's a lot of adaptation, it's a lot of creativity, and ultimately training off the bike as well. We have great strength and conditioning staff at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs who work with our athletes, as you mentioned, to build their core strength and help them really manage that bike in a really creative way that most people don't even have to think about.
And Ian, one of the things that is special about these athletes is it's not always what you see is what you get. In Joe's case, he is also missing one of his kneecaps. His knee was damaged in the construction accident that cost him his arm. And so you talk about asymmetry. Yes, he's got a left arm, but there's also some interesting adaptations that he's had to make and has successfully done with one of his legs as well. And we don't necessarily see that right away, but that is one of the challenges that he has so successfully overcome.
And Joe and a lot of our athletes, most of our athletes, you're exactly right, have things you see and things you don't see. One of the things I will say is we give a shout out to our national team staff at U.S. Paralympic Cycling, particularly our medical staff and our recovery staff who work on our athletes after races, in between events, and really help them recover and get ready for the next event. And they have to be creative too. There's a lot going on there sometimes, and just trying to help these athletes stay healthy and get ready for competition is an ongoing challenge for us as well.
Yeah, talk to me more, Ian, about some of the support that you offer Paralympic athletes that are trying to bring home a medal. I mean, when you talk about offering medical support and things like that, what kind of things are available to them?
Well, we have a big resident program.
Sorry, we're one to go program. As watching Sanchez go through the line out on his last lap. But yeah, keep talking to me about what kind of services you guys offer.
Yeah, we have a resident program at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center here in Colorado Springs. We have some athletes who live on campus here at the facility. We have other athletes who live in town that we call off-complex resident athletes. But then we also, this is something we've been doing more the last few years, we've been bringing athletes in from out of state who are on our national team to take advantage of those services. And that includes world-class sports medicine, where we can do evaluative work for all of our athletes and bring them in and just run them through a battery of tests and see how they do and how they're doing medically. We have an incredible strength and conditioning staff, sports psychology staff as well, who work with our athletes that are based out of the training center. And then, of course, we have the velodrome here in Colorado Springs, which I'm happy to say is operational right now, and we have weekly training going on there. So our paracycling athletes, some of the few athletes in the country who are able to train on a velodrome weekly during the pandemic, it's been awesome.
Nice. That has to be a comfortable feeling to be able to get back on the track. I'm sure a lot of riders have spent some significant amounts of time there. I'll bet they were happy to get back to training in Colorado Springs.
And that program led by Sarah Hammer, who's our Associate Director of High Performance for the Paralympic Cycling Program. She's a name I'm sure you've heard before, Brad.
Yeah, Sarah has really done an incredible job of bringing her talents into the para world. We see a lot of athletes that will come over into para racing either as a coach or as a pilot. Maybe I know we talked about Katie Compton doing some piloting for some tandem BVI racing. So it's nice to see Sarah heading up that program. One of the best in the world. I can't think of a better person to be heading up that program.
Yeah, pretty incredible mentoring going on, and particularly on our women's side, Sarah's one of the first national team coaches that representing the women, and she's done a great job there. And I think once she came on with our program, we started seeing some of the other national teams hiring female coaches as well. So it's just been a great thing to see. And Sarah's obviously super passionate about her work with our athletes.
Big numbers. Mark Anthony Sanchez representing the Audi cycling team. He is going to cross the line, finish up his race, put it in the books. Mark Anthony Sanchez. Fantastic ride right there. Get numbers. Well done, sir.
Went away solo from the line. This is going to be the battle for second and third with Porter and Kimball locking in together here. Not sure what happened to Chuck McDonald. We saw McDonald with them earlier, but looks like Porter and Kimball going to sprint it out for silver and bronze. Up next,
Kimball,
Charlie
a bit of a
McDonald
sprint
is-
specialist. And Aiden
Yeah,
Porter,
Charlie
who's
McDonald's
one of our
coming
up-and-coming
back. He's not-
athletes.
One to go.
And
one
now
to go, one
going
to
over to
go.
paras with one to go. Hand cycle, sorry, with one to go. We were with the paras earlier, the C categories. So these are the H category riders getting one lap to go. With Chipping still out there, the British rider who took the early lead. Looks like he's going to go solo off the front here. All right, so this is Alicia Dana, Ian, in our H3 category for the women. Talk to me about Alicia, because this is another name that I've heard a lot in para racing. She's become a pretty impressive rider, a star in her own right.
That's right. Alicia, longtime competitor in hand cycling, won the silver medal in Rio in the time trial. And again, a hopeful for our Tokyo 2020 Paralympic team. Also a favorite in the time trial for the event in Tokyo. So good to see Alicia up there. Really, I think second overall in the hand cycling group, which is fantastic to see.
Look at this battle for second, third, and fourth in our C category. McDonald not out of it. Porter, Kimball duking it out. Porter now running out of quarters, coming to the line, but McDonald and Kimball are going to take it all the way to the line. Looks like Kimball is going to push ahead and grab second place in the C category event. Nicely done.
Serious sprint. They were in the red zone for a good couple minutes on the way up to the line there. And there's McDonald slipping in for third, it looks like. So Porter and Kimball getting the line together, and McDonald must have finished up earlier. I think maybe one of those riders was a lap up. So going back to our hand cycling races with Chipping about to finish up here out on their last lap.
Well, I was going to say with Kimball that he should have a good sprint, considering he's been a previous world champion in the team sprint representing the U.S. at World Championships. So when you have speed, you have speed. But going back now to our hand cyclists, pretty good battle going on right there. And it's interesting, because they're laying down and pedaling. They can't really have the monitor right in front of them. So you can see them setting it. The monitor is a little bit to their left or to the right, where they can look over to the side to see what's going on, to see where they are on course. But it's a tough 12 to 15 laps that these riders are doing, and they're just powering right through it.
And Frankie, I got a $20 bet that says, as Ian pointed out, these folks are top-level MacGyvers. There is more than one monitor that's mounted on the ceiling above them. I would bet $20.
I would bet that there's no monitor on the ceiling.
Well, maybe not the ceiling, but on an arrangement that allows them to put the monitor above them. You see some of the riders looking up right there. Some to the side, some above. But, I mean, if you spend any time with these folks, they figure out ways to get it done. It really is inspirational.
So we are showing Alicia Dana here in first place here. I think our leader had a technical, maybe dropout. I'm not sure what happened to Chipping, but Chipping just dropped out of the game here. So I think maybe lost connection, lost Wi-Fi. So that's going to move Dana up into first on course. But I think we can give Chipping the win. I think it looked like it was pretty comfortable on the way to the line. You hate to see a race decided because of a technical. And now a pass on the way to the line.
Yeah, look at that. Number 1 to number 2. So Montegiato coming through right there as Alicia Dana. And Alicia Dana, 2019 World Hand Cycle Champion, putting in a good ride. But this is a little bit of a surprise right here. She just got passed.
Well, this is, I think one of our...
Go ahead.
One of our men's competitors. This is, I think, one of our men's competitors, Spanish rider who I'm not familiar with, but interesting pass here, passing Alicia here in the last bit of the race. But Alicia's still riding strong with another international rider, Andre, currently sitting in third.
Dana actually hanging in there. She went into the red zone trying to cover the move. And we'll see if she can hold off Andre. Looks like that should be fine. Andre sitting at 230 meters back from Dana. But the Spanish rider, Monteguido, up to the front. And
what's really cool, Brad, really quick, is that on our registration sheet, we talked about in the men's race, other riders coming in that we really weren't on the registration sheet. On our registration sheet, all Americans. But here, which is fantastic, with the virtual world, Todd, you've talked about it. Can you imagine trying to travel from Europe to come over here for these events? They can hop on the trainer. So we'll get, you'll get Spain, you'll get France, you'll get Italy. It's fantastic to see the different Europeans joining in the virtual world, not only in the hand cycle, the uprights, but also in the men and women's race.
Monteguido across the line. All you have to do if you're racing in Europe is just commit to being up at midnight and laying down an FTP effort at midnight and then trying to recover from it, which isn't easy.
Yeah, the time zones are no joke for the international riders. I know we had to adjust some of the start times in the Echelon Racing League to accommodate mostly European riders that wanted to have a chance to race. But yeah, this is a tough time slot right here for European-based riders. Looks like Andre coming to the line in for third. So we're going to have two international riders on our overall podium. Again, we'll break it out in between men and women once we sort everything out at the end of the day today. But everybody racing together, they'll be scored and broken out separately. So looks like our top three through with Monteguido from Spain, and then Alicia Dana and Andre in for third. I wish I had a first name for Andre, but he is not on my start list. So see if we can figure out who it is in third place here.
Ken Bestine just finished up to be able to take fourth place, the 55-year-old out of New York, a previous winner of the Pittsburgh Marathon also. And that's common. A lot of, they race against each other, but a lot of them go do marathons all over the country. And it's amazing the speed that they can go with, when they're doing their marathon. The hand cycles and the recumbents, extremely fast.
Todd, you're a big runner. I know you see a lot of paracycling, hand cycling at a lot of the marathons out there. A good opportunity to get some racing in there as well.
Yeah, it actually is. And the community is so supportive of these athletes because, you recognize the effort that goes into the upper body strength, especially for hand cyclists that are covering 26.2. The two-legged mobility that we take for granted, you interact with a hand cyclist and you go, oh, okay, yeah. You have a greater respect for what these athletes are doing, not only in cycling, in the running world. Melissa Stockwell, a friend of mine who's racing in Florida this weekend, she's the one that kind of highlights for me the logistic challenge. She took a picture of herself at the airport. She's got her bike bag, she's got her race bag, and she's got her spare racing leg bag. She's a vet. She was a captain in the Army, lost her leg during serving this country, and now she is a celebrated triathlete. When she goes to races, she has to make sure she packs her racing legs. Just part of the challenge.
Yeah, Ian, the logistics of paracycling, hand cycling can be really tough. I know there's a lot of organizations out there that can help athletes move into the para racing or hand cycling world if they're interested in maybe trying out this sport. What advice do you give to someone out there that maybe has a friend or family member or a spectator that wants to try paracycling?
Yeah, there are more opportunities now than there ever have been to get into the sport, and a lot of that we see in terms of the technology, and there's more equipment available. And I think you see a lot of teams, for example, represented here today. Paralyzed Veterans Racing has a team. If you're involved in the military community, they're a great outfit to get involved with. U.S. Military Cycling also has a paracycling program. We see the Challenge Athletes Foundation out here who has a great team. So a lot of different grassroots organizations and now even competitive organizations around the country who are supporting paracycling. So one of the things you can do is reach out to your local cycling club, and eventually they have now all have some level of connection with a racing team or a club team that has a paracycling aspect to their program. So that's a great place to start. And then of course the state time trial championships now, I think in all 50 states, are offering opportunities for paracyclists to race as well. And that's another great way to kind of just get started in the sport and see how you stack up.
It's awesome to see the opportunities growing, more and more opportunities to train and more opportunities to race out there as well. And then obviously the equipment, sometimes a big hurdle, but those organizations have incredible programs to get the equipment that's needed into the hands of the athletes that need it. There's funding out there, and they can really adapt bikes to any ability level. So Todd, I know we race with Brent Emery every year up at the Tour of America's Dairyland. He does a lot of work with Emery Cycles, with adaptive bikes, both for competitive and non-competitive riders out there.
Yeah, he's a champion of putting people on bikes. His goal in life is, hey, let's get on a bike. No qualifications. You want to get on a bike, get on a bike. And he knows, as we do, that you put somebody on a bike, it's really hard not to smile. And so he works through his shop, Emery Cycle, with a couple of organizations that are in Wisconsin to adapt bikes as needed so that no matter who you are, you can ride. And it's fantastic. He's done presentations at various Tour of America's Dairyland venues. And yes, in the history of Toad, he's raced a lot, and himself an Olympian, but now a champion for getting people on bikes who might not otherwise be able to ride. So happy to be partnered with Brent Emery.
All right, top 10 are in for our paracycling race as Mark Anthony Sanchez holds on for the win. Jason Kimball going to take second. Charles McDonald in for third in the C4 category. I'm not sure what category Sanchez is. He did not register on our start list, so we'll figure out what category he's racing under. Aiden Porter in fourth place overall. Looks like the second C3 on the list there. And then Adam Allen in fifth. Paul Kilgore in sixth. Dennis Perungan in seventh, and then Omar Mobili in eighth, with Cesar Sotobdin in ninth place, and then Holly Coaster taking 10th place overall. Now, again, these will be broken out between men's and women's, and then C1 through 5, H1 through 5 categories as riders continue to roll in. Ian, a lot of different categories out there racing. It's important to measure themselves against the different categories, but we also want to observe our overall winners out there as well. So the categories are really important because they are drastically different between the riders. It's riders of all different ability levels out there racing today.
Yeah, and I believe Mark Anthony Sanchez is a tandem pilot. So although he himself is able-bodied, he's supporting an athlete with a visual impairment when they're racing on the tandem. And it was great to see Aiden Porter out there, who was fourth, I think, in our paracycling race. He's one of our new up-and-coming athletes who just came into the program this year, and we've actually only seen him so far virtually. So good to see Aiden out there representing for our new development pipeline.
And looks like our hand cycling riders starting to finish up over on their course, as well as we watch Sweet rolling across the line to wrap up the day. That'll be good for 12th place overall. Same thing here. We're going to have multiple categories out there, but they'll all be scored together overall, and then we'll break it out separately. So let's take a look at our hand cyclists here, with Carlos Montegudo taking the win, Alicia Dana in second, and then Andre going to hold on for third place. I see. The first name for Andre was H because he put hand biker for hand cyclist. I think that was a translation error in the instruction for Andre there. Ken Bastine in fourth place. Dan Steitz into fifth. Antonio Del Rio in sixth place, with Nolan, Jones, and Britt in seventh, eighth, and ninth, and then Gerard Afouk rounding out our top 10. So you can see some pretty close times out there. The watts per kilogram, impressive numbers here. Alicia Dana doing 3 watts per kilo in the women's H3 category. So some really great racing out there, and a really cool opportunity to offer racing to the para athletes. Ian, I know we're going to be racing again tomorrow for another day of para racing here at the Tour of America's Dairyland. I hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow as we continue the racing here. Are you going to be around?
Yeah, I'll be on tomorrow, and this is super fun. So really appreciate you guys including the paracycling and the hand cycling athletes. That's awesome. Love it.
We're going to clean up some categories for tomorrow. We learned about some new riders today. Frankie's going to brush up on his Spanish and German to get us some insider information on our new participants out there today, our international riders in the hand cycling and paracycling competition. But want to give a big thank you to you, Ian, for all the work that you do with these athletes. And thanks to the athletes for coming out today. It was I know there was some question about whether we could round up enough athletes to have a good race. But, Ian, I think we did it today. Great turnout today.
Yeah, that was amazing. Super fun to see and great turnout, as you said, and also super competitive. So great to see everyone out there racing hard.
All right. Thank you very much, Ian. That's Ian Lawless with U.S. Paracycling as we wrap up our para racing here at the Tour of America's Dairyland and get ready for Pro Women coming up here about 2.5 minutes away from rolling them off the start line. So, Frankie and Todd, let's start shifting to talking about who we should be watching in this field. I think Jackie Godby is the obvious name in this group, but let's talk about some other riders that had good rides yesterday that might have a shot at getting up there today. Frankie, I want to start with Christy Tracy because I think maybe the more aggressive rider of that last group of 3 that was out there yesterday. Remember, Jackie Godby took it down to a final group of 3 that sprinted to the line, but there were like 7 to 10 riders that did a really good job of hanging in to those Jackie Godby attacks, Frankie.
Yeah, those constant accelerations from Godby really, it takes its toll on a lot of the riders. And so it dwindled down to 7. I think Velocity Vixen riders, they rode really well in the beginning part of the race, just coming off, the strength of Godby a little bit later on. But Godby just turns the pedals over. But Christy Tracy is able to stay right there. Eleanor Weissman has been able to stay right there. So I think on this course, it could be a little bit harder for them to attack her to be able to get away. But Godby has shown she can sprint very, very well, and so it's going to be up to the other riders to figure out how to dethrone her.
And then on the run into the finish, Todd Godby gets away, but Tracy and Wiseman had a heck of a sprint to try to go to the line. It was a close one for second and third yesterday.
Yeah, both Wiseman and Tracy were sitting there last night, scratching their head, trying to solve the puzzle that is Jackie Godby. So let's see what they come up with. Actually, the emotional favorite here is in Eleanor Wiseman. She's racing in the European time zones. It's not quite as late for this start as it has been the last 2 days, but a technical 2 days ago where she dropped out connection for a few seconds and had to really work to get back on. Second on the podium yesterday. Let's see if she can't solve the riddle that is Jackie Godby.
Look at the time gap between second and third yesterday. Wiseman at 1.33, 4 seconds down, and Tracy at 1.337 seconds down. That's, 3 1,000ths of a second. I went to public school, so you have to check my math on that, Todd, but I think I got that right.
Yeah, I like what you've done there, Brad. That's, in fact, so that was a battle, but you know that the competitor in each of those athletes is looking at that top step. And, if Jackie Godby goes 15 for 15, nobody's going to be surprised. But the real story is going to be if we're able to slip somebody else onto the top step of the podium before this series is done.
Now we'll see if we get any new names up there today, as looks like Godby going to be back to her old ways up on the front here. She comes back into the fold. Now, yesterday it was just sort of slowly putting on pressure at the front for Jackie Godby, right? She would kind of spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes up in the yellow-orange zone. When the pressure would drop just a little bit, she'd go up and lift the tempo. Godby just kind of toying with the other riders here. But, Todd, you heard it yesterday in her interview. She said, I like having fun. I like making the race interesting. If that means I have to sit up a little bit to let the group stay together, I'll do that. Jackie Godby's not afraid to make some moves to make the racing more fun here on RGT.
And I'd say the rest of the women's field scoff at that statement and don't believe it for 1 second. I don't think any of them actually experienced her sitting up at any point. She has kept the heat on these fields every single day, pretty much from the get-go. One interesting wrinkle, we were talking about whether Kristen Doble-Hickok was going to be able to integrate her travel to her pro camp and be able to grab a trainer and a connection and jump in to try and defend her position. I don't see her on the start list, which is good news for Christy Tracy.
Yeah, and also with the time change, because in Moab, Utah, it's 12:30. That'd be the middle of their training day if they had to go out for a training ride. And so perhaps tomorrow Double Hillcock could be able to get back on and get some points. But you're right, it boded well for Christy Tracy. And Jackie Godby yesterday also talked about how in the corners, she would kind of poke and prod the rest of the group by doing some accelerations to see how they would respond. Today, 4 corners, you can't poke and prod as much, so we might have a little bit bigger group being able to hang out with Jackie Godby. I talked with Eleanor Weissman today, and she said she felt really good, but overall, I said, what is the hardest part of the virtual racing? And she said the technology issues. She's in Belgium getting treatment for the thyroid cancer that she has, going through that. And just, I guess in Belgium, where she's living, doesn't really have the greatest internet connection. So she says she'll spend the entire race just anxiety-ridden, worried about the last few laps and having a dropout. And, of course, we saw that happen to her a couple days. But you want everything to go perfectly. I mean, you don't want to be focused on something else than pedaling. And so for Eleanor Weissman, it's a little bit more challenging.
New worries in 2021. I don't think bike racers would have ever had to worry about their internet dropping out, but here we are in 2021 making sure that bike racers have the most stable connection possible. Todd, it's just like real life. You want to try and dial everything, control the controllables, right? So for Wiseman, I think that's probably frustrating when she can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about controlling the controllables, a really straightforward course on Shorewood. Basically 4 corners. Once you get around turn number 3, there's a little bit of a wiggle that presents a challenge if you're 4 or 5 wide. If you're at speed, probably not that big of a deal. The longest course in the Tour of America's Dairyland course family, if you will. Not much elevation change really to speak of, but long straights. Taking a look at our pro field, cranking the course at high speed, cross the finish line, all left turns. So you're going to take a left turn. You're going to head towards the lake, really close to the lake, absolutely beautiful along the lakefront there in Shorewood. We don't quite get there, but a lot of riders on their cool down were down and like, wow, that's fantastic. Then you're going to take a left turn, and this is really party central along here. Big lawns, all kinds of opportunities, parties all over the place. People hanging out, grilling, enjoying being with friends, and watching the racing right on their curb fronts. Can't beat it. Long straight, all kinds of opportunities to attack. Foolishly, I would say, because you're visible, you'll be chased down. Around turn number 3, and then right away, just a little bit of a wiggle. Plenty of room there. You want to carry the fast lines, especially if you're at speed. Then back up towards Oakland. Now, Oakland is where the Shorewood Business Improvement District has all these businesses along the start-finish straight dialed up for race day. There's all kinds of activities that the businesses participate in. All kinds of fun. Cross the finish line. Let's do it again. 1.2 miles, 1.15 in actuality, each lap around the Shorewood Criterium course.
Frankie, this might be the least technical course that we're going to see over these 4 days of virtual racing here at the Tour of America's Dairyland. So if there was going to be a day for Christy Tracy, I think this one's probably it. Tracy definitely skews towards the endurance rider, and Shorewood, of all of the 4 criteriums that we're racing here at the Tour of America's Dairyland, I think Shorewood probably has the best opportunity for someone like Christy Tracy. I want to invite people over to the Zoom room again, as the Tour of America's Dairyland will be giving away prizes for the rest of the day today over in the official fan Zoom. You can find that link on the Tour of America's Dairyland Facebook page. They've got prize packs from Quick Trip and Subaru. Go join our friend Alyssa Weber over in the fan Zoom room and get yourself some Toad swag. So, Frankie, looks like Christy Tracy getting away. There is our fan Zoom room. Looks like Chris Naven has joined with a festive hat here as well. Right on, more people joining in. So Alyssa's going to be giving away some prizes here.
Wow.
I want to be in that. We're in the wrong room here, guys.
Yeah.
Triple X Racing, very represented.
Yeah. And the hat, I don't know. I'm not sure that's allowed during quarantine, that hat. It's, but nice.
St. Patty's Day is coming up, and Brad, you must have rolled the magic 8 ball because Christy Tracy attacked right when you talked about her.
I know. What can I say? I just thought the course was perfect for her. I think I also see her husband Jamie on the fan Zoom call as well. I know they're always tuning into the broadcast, so maybe Christy's just putting on a show for us.
Looks like we still have 9 hanging out in that front group. And if we follow suit to the previous 2 days, we'll see that number dwindle down during the course of time as Jackie Godby continues putting the heat on. But as we mentioned, less turns, less of those technical challenges, taking on the physics built into RGT. So possibly we're going to see that group stay a little stronger all the way to the line. 32 kilometers remaining here at the Shorewood Criterium.
Little split at the back here as Baker comes unglued in 10th. We'll go further back and find Morgan Chafin here in 11th for the Velocity Vixen team. Morgan has been misconsistency out there in the Echelon Racing League, just refusing to throw in the towel when she gets into these ERL races. It's been really fun watching Morgan race over the last few weeks. Go a little further back and find what I think is Sue Holt here, the British rider, sitting in 12th place for the Amy D Foundation. And then looks like maybe a smaller group forming behind her. I see 13th, 14th, and 15th. And this group of 3 right here linked up. So a few little groups forming out there. But, Todd, those solo riders got it tough out there on RGT and in real life as well, I guess. Anytime you're caught out alone, that makes it just that much harder.
Well, in the course preview, you may have caught wind of, no pun intended, the mention of the lake. And anytime you're around Lake Michigan, things happen. We have what's called lake effect snow. If you're not from Chicago or not from Milwaukee, you might not be familiar with that. The lake creates its own meteorologic zones. And so our course in Shorewood, close to the lake, it's possible to have wind. And in fact, the last time we raced in Shorewood, there was a storm that came rumbling in, and we actually watched large sections of fencing walk away. Just went away. There it goes. There goes the fencing because of the winds that are possible there. So, yeah, solo riders sometimes, depending on where that wind's out of, have to deal with losing the draft, whereas on the back straight, if the wind's coming off the lake, which is kind of angled and north of you on after turn number 2, being tucked in a draft, not the worst thing in the world.
Luckily, no lake effect wind coming off the virtual course today, so they don't have to deal with any headwinds or tailwinds out there, as you see some of our 4 leaders working hard down in the bottom right of your screen. And then here's our Zoom fan room, not quite working as hard, but celebrating as hard. I like that.
I don't know why I keep pushing me on the outside now.
We're focusing.
They're focusing. Okay.
Brad, just a little bit ago, about, I would say, it's only a 4-corner course, so we're probably have gone by a lap because we were talking for a little bit, but Angie Bonacici was hanging in there and doing so well, and then all of a sudden she just got a little bit of a gap, just a little bit of loss of attention, and she came right off the back of the group. I mean, it was just heartbreaking to see, and it started off as like a 2 bike length gap, then a 3 bike length gap, and now she finds herself 100 meters off the back of the group. There she is right there. She was hanging right there for so long. So on the other note, Velocity Vixen Holly Larson doing a fantastic job still in that first group, being able to go up there. But Bonacici almost made it to be able to hang on to them. And as you guys have talked about, that first 10 minutes is critical, right? We're at 10 minutes and 50 seconds. It's just a matter of getting past that kind of ledge to be able to hang on. And Bonacici just came up a little bit short.
I think there's something about the Velocity Vixen jersey, like you're legally obligated to finish the race. You're just not allowed to quit when you put the Velocity Vixen on jersey on, Todd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case. Well, they're taking a great deal of pride in that jersey. That jersey, as we've mentioned in the past, has been around for a while. They were one of the first to form a virtual team, get together a jersey, and then start promoting that team and bringing in riders for group rides, for racing. and they've really done a nice job with it. And when you look at the team leaderboard, you see evidence of that. So there's an unwritten let's finish, because every finish has the potential to contribute to that leaderboard for the team competition.
See Crone fighting back into this group, went into the red zone, digging deep, and back in. And then Jackie Godby gets to the front just as she makes it back in. But Godby is just brutal when it comes to setting tempo up here. But I think she likes being on the front. I mean, I think Jackie Godby prefers to be the hunter rather than the hunted in a scenario like this. Frankie, we've seen it a lot. She doesn't want to get into a breakaway, but she does want to be in charge of the tempo in the field.
She comes from that triathlon background. She's used to riding solo. She's used to getting in her own zone and doing her own thing. But at the same time, you know, in speaking with her, she talks about how she's learned so much about drafting and riding in the group and taking, you know, learning about strategy and taking advantage of the draft. Not really seeing it as much nowadays, you know. She tends to ride on the front. She just gets into that race mode of triathlon, and she just sets the tempo that she's comfortable with, and it protects her, because it gives her the first line through the corner. It prevents her from coming off the back and having to put out an excess amount of power to stay with the group. And it puts a lot of other people in stress, because you have to make sure, like right now, Crone, every time they hit a turn, Crone and the others are having to get out of the saddle and go red to be able to catch back up. And so that just wears on you, and that's it's hard to overcome those stakes.
Todd, the acceleration is the worst part, or the hardest part, I should say, of criterium racing. You can kind of get in that zone in a road race and just stay there, but the constant acceleration and deceleration sometimes is the worst part.
Yeah, structured training will put you in what's called sweet spot training, where you're at 90, 95% of your FTP. And, you know, the goal is to stay there as long as you can. And sweet spot is a great place to build up the cardiovascular, the fitness, the muscle systems, and everything else that's going on. But sweet spot ain't going to cut it when it comes to accelerating out of corner. You have to go into the red, into anaerobic, which is where you're well above your functional threshold. And you do that again and again and again, it starts wearing you out. So, yeah, it is the corners, and that's one of the cool things about RGT is they've built into the cornering of this the dynamics that simulate real cornering. You can't just go flying through that corner. You actually have a little bit of a scrub of the speed so that it emulates real-life cornering just a little bit.
Yeah, speaking of the cornering in Shorewood, the wiggle that we've been talking about, this sort of brief little chicane part of this course is so important, because if you can get it right, you can really carry some major speed through it. Todd, I know you had a chance to go down to Shorewood and check out the wiggle.
We're on course here at the Tour of America's Dairyland and the Shorewood Criterium Cycling Classic. As you can see, we're at the corner of Kensington and Frederick. It's not really turn 3. It's not turn 4. We're going to call it turn 3.5, or the wiggle. What happens is Kensington has a nice little chicane in it. So as riders are making their way back to turn 4, where they do a left hand onto Oakland for our finish line, they have this nice little feature to negotiate in their racing. We call it a feature. We think it makes for fantastic racing, and we know riders agree as well. From the Shorewood Criterium Cycling Classic, we're on course. Back to you guys.
It looks so different without the fencing and 100 riders going through there at 30 miles an hour, Todd.
And piles of snow and cars coming through. Yeah, everywhere we went in preparing for the Echelon Racing Series, there was this sense of something's missing. And it's not just fence. It's people. It's energy. It's the excitement of putting some racing on. We'll get there. We're looking forward to it.
I miss the spectators as well. I'm happy to report that over in the fan Zoom, they're showing off their dogs. Everyone's going to get their dogs to get them on the Zoom. So they're having a good time. I think Chris Navin's dog just put on a XXX hat. And I think somebody might be taking a nap with the dog as well. Let's see if we can get them in here.
All right.
We got to get him that special dog food.
Hassan Duckenpfeffer. Hassan Duckenpfeffer. Hessen-Duckenpfeffer, yeah, from Froome Family Farms. That's going to be a very important part of my spring. I've already talked to Walter, and he is on board with the test program. So we're going to be getting some Hessen-Duckenpfeffer here, and we're going to be having Walter fill out surveys on a regular basis as to how the Hessen-Duckenpfeffer experience is working for him. And our new sponsor for the Tour of America's Dairyland Dog of the Day, I could not be more excited. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, so the dog actually has to move so that there's credit that it's a real... Oh, there we go. It's a real dog. It's a real dog. There's another real dog. This is fantastic. This is fantastic. Christy, Tracy, no dog there, but okay. We'll just let that slide for right now. Nonetheless, great to see the dogs. Tour of America's Dairyland Dog of the Day. I'm biased, but it's the best part of the whole deal.
I think I have to agree. Look at this one. Let's see if I can get this going here. How's that for a way to watch the bike race?
Yeah. So last year, the last time we raced, the standout dog of the day was a lab named June. Now, if you'll recall, we had one race where we had some time, and there was time in between a couple races, and so we did an entire segment on Dog of the Day. We invited all the Grafton dogs to come to the stage, and we had a dozen different dogs that competed for Dog of the Day in Grafton. Now, June just walked up, laid down, and went to sleep right in the middle of Wisconsin Boulevard. Grafton was far enough into the series that I kind of related to that. I could have laid down and taken a nap just as easily. And so I made June the winner of our Dog of the Day competition. And I laid down on the street to make the announcement because I wanted to emulate June, our Grafton Dog of the Day.
We've had some good ones over the years at the Tour of America's Dairyland, that's for sure. We've gotten to meet some pretty incredible pets in all the different cities that we visit. All right, checking back in with our pro women's field. Still a big group up here. We are looking at 1 through, I think, 7. Make that 6 in this front group. I think Simon's going to be the last rider to tack on in 6. And then you see about 500 meters back to Larson from the Velocity Vixen quad group in 7, 8, 9, 10, and now Angie Bonacisi into 11th. So I think this group is a little bigger than it was at this point in the race yesterday, Todd. We're only 20 minutes in, 23K to go, but if you made that group of 6 at this point, you just got to try and settle in and hope that you can hold on to whatever Jackie Godby has planned for today.
Well, we got a wild card in here, Brad and Frankie, because Simons, the Belgian, was not racing with us yesterday, so she's unknown. Anna Strenlow, Sydney Sidlick, Tracy, the rest of the names, we recognize those. But we have Simons appearing for the first time in our Tour of America's Dairyland weekend. So we don't know what she might be hanging on to in terms of a solution for the Jackie Godby dilemma.
Well, as much as she's a mystery, because she's not on the registration list either, so I didn't know to be able to find any information on her. But if she wasn't in the previous races, fresh legs, right? And I think that's going to be a key ingredient of being able to have fresh legs coming into these very fast criteriums. And you guys were talking about the corners earlier, and I was thinking to myself, with the RGT platform, with the way they have the physics for the corners, it's really what makes the race. Because if you didn't have the slowdown in the corners, they would just be flying around in each other's draft, and there would be nothing to drop anybody, nothing to get rid of anybody, and it definitely would make the racing a little bit more boring. And so, having the physics of the corners actually really focuses the attention of the to really focus on what's happening in the race, to really have to pay attention, and to be able to have the fitness to be able to keep up with each other. And I think I've enjoyed that part of the RGT platform.
Yeah, very much agree with you, Frankie. It's it moves us a little bit closer to emulating real racing. And, I mean, let the imagination run wild. What will virtual racing look like 3 years from now? Borrowing from the gamification world, and so much going on in the game world and esports. All you have to do is spend 5 minutes exploring esports. There are huge events around esports, people watching other people play video games, in essence. And so it kind of feels like cycling, virtual racing, kind of on the forefront. A lot more development happening. We're finding ways to make sure that the power that's being reported is accurate. Brad talked a little bit about this yesterday, where the whole process of going through the weigh-ins to get as accurate a representation of what the rider is doing is possible. So it's kind of interesting to see what virtual racing is going to look like 3 years from now. Of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, we've got sunshine, we've got temperature, and we've got color bars, which means it may be to ride a real bike very soon.
We're trying to get back to it. Looks like we lost our camera feeds there.
Well, clearly it went under one of the bridges in Milwaukee.
Charge the hamster.
I'm feeding him as fast as I can here.
There we go. We're coming back. Yeah, a number of years ago, I spent a lot of time on AM radio, and when I'd ride around, we would just not talk anytime we went.
Let's try that.
Okay, let's try that. The Gen Zs are going, what's AM radio? Smiling, that's all that matters. As long as she's smiling, we're good to go.
All right, I am going to feed hamster real quick. We might go black here. We're going to try something on the end here to get things back up and running smoothly here. So bear with us. We're going to take a couple back.